Satchel out.
Shadows traveling. Here. I have them.
Spike down A. Last player standing.
Oh, surrounded by minha família. We won't lose.
Here.
Here.
Praise. Sow your chaos. Shadows traveling. Reloading.
Last player standing. Flawless.
Their jet has nothing on me. I got her.
Here. Here.
Satchel out.
Blinding. Gun here. Spike planted.
Last player standing.
I'm out of stuff. Forge is a path, Sky. I'll be right behind you.
I have the spike.
Nailed it.
Reloading. Shadows traveling.
Got one. My ult's ready.
Spike planted.
There they are.
Cover going out.
Here comes it. Fire in the hole. Wait for me.
Last player standing.
These parasites aren't going to take one step past this place.
I'm saving.
Find the weak point and break it. I got the spike.
Grenade!
Teleport squadron.
Flushing sight. Chill out.
Hawk out!
Shadows traveling.
Enemy B.
Hawk out!
Spike down B. Last player standing. One enemy remaining.
So. My ult is ready.
This party's just begun.
Need a drop. Thanks.
Let's start this party.
Hawk out!
Reloading. Our spike carrier is killed.
Have the
Spike down B.
Reloading. Spike carrier's down.
Spike down B.
I got the spike. Deal with my coffee.
Grounded.
Satchel out. Reloading.
Thirty seconds left.
Careful. Satchel out.
Last player standing.
Territory.
My rules! Ten seconds left.
If you see one of my creatures, it's a good thing, alright?
They
Figure
are
out what they
so
do
dead.
eventually.
I'm saving.
I got yous, okay?
What's this?
Cover going out.
Hawk out!
Shadows traveling.
Blinded.
I have the spike.
Grenade.
Time to hunt. Scout destroyed.
Spike down A. Last player standing.
They found my trap.
I'm amped. Let's go. I got things to do.
Time to mobilize my pack.
Cover going out.
I'm out of stuff.
I have the spike.
Reloading.
Spike down mid.
Enemy spotted mid.
One less.
Seek them out.
Last
spike
player
carrier's
standing. Spike down mid.
Found one.
30 seconds left.
Hawk out.
Anyone have any splints? I may have jammed my fingers. Multiple fingers. Come on, let's go! Enemy spotted mid.
My ultimate is ready.
Heal up, squad.
Here.
Hawk out.
Blinded.
Fire in the
Going
hole!
out. Shadows traveling.
Precision kill. Enemy spotted B. Enemy spotted B.
Last player standing.
I got your backs. Just, you know, from the front.
I will rip the light from them.
Here. Here.
Cover going out.
Hawk out. Blinded.
Spike down B.
Bomb buddy out.
Shadows traveling. Watch I have the
Reloading.
spike.
Last player standing.
They want to dance? I'll lead.
Hawk out.
The hunt begins.
was traveling. Reloading.
Prepare for hellfire!
Thirty seconds left. Last player standing. Last round in the half.
Buy the best guns you can.
Let's flush them out.
Hawk out! Blinded.
Enemy B.
Reloading.
My ult is ready. They are so dead!
Fire in the hole! That's just my area is killed.
Spike down B. Last player standing.
Party's over.
Switching sides.
They think they know pain. They can't begin to comprehend it.
Kick them out.
Hawk out! Blinded.
Grenade!
Spike planted. Last player
You
standing.
lose. Teleport's ready. Away with you. That's
Match point.
Wait until I blind them to strike.
Enemy A. I have them.
Hawk out! Blinded.
Spike planted. Last player standing. Attackers win. Match found.
All right, where's the fight?
Sky, ever thought about making other summons? Like, lions. Or, oh, dragons.
Tried once. It was not pretty.
Cover going out.
Hawk out!
Reloading.
Spike planted.
Enemy spotted. A.
Time to hunt. Here!
Last player standing.
Kill their leader and the rest will flee like rats.
We win. We survive.
Spike planted.
Enemy spotted A. Train harder.
Last player standing.
parasites aren't going to take one step past this place. I got yous, okay? Hawk out!
Spike planted.
Hi! I'm pissed!
Headshot.
One enemy remaining.
Was that important?
We have come back from worse. Let's go! Hawk out! Reloading. Barrier created.
Spike planted.
Enemy kill. Blocking sight.
Removed.
Last player standing.
I got your backs. Just, from the front.
Watch this.
You are powerless.
Spike planted.
Shadows traveling.
Last player standing.
Deep breaths, everyone. Your hearts are pounding.
We can push them back.
Enemy spotted C.
Spike down.
Hi!
C.
Pissed!
Spike planted. Last player standing.
Knocked him. Another fight? Clean slate. Let's leave whatever happened in the past.
Embarrassing.
Here.
Reloading.
Hawk out! Seek
Last player standing.
I hate to say it, but probably best to play as a team. So, what's the plan?
Together.
Blind.
Spike planted.
Enemy spotted A.
time to hunt.
Opponent killed.
One enemy remaining.
There.
Hawk out! Blinded. Hawk out! Blinded.
Reloading. Prepare yourselves. We fight once again.
Careful here.
Hawk out!
Enemy spotted. B.
Hawk out!
Spike down B.
Pissed.
One enemy remaining.
It is done.
Your duty is not over.
This place is nice,
where I
but not nice enough to die in. Let's win and get out of here.
For you, hermanita.
Hawk out!
Spike planted.
Dropped.
You are powerless.
Spotted A.
Can't use that.
Hawk out.
One enemy remaining. Last player standing.
Time to hunt.
Clutch.
Well done, Sky. Nature's wrath indeed.
Let's go.
Hawk out. My ult ready. Blinded. Hawk out. Blinded.
Spike planted.
Time to hunt.
Eliminate.
Hawk out. Blinded.
Last player standing.
Sleep tight.
One enemy remaining.
Why did I sign up for this shit? My ult's ready.
Last round before the switch.
Don't be big. Spend it all before it's gone.
Hawk out. Blinded. See. Found one. One dead.
Watch this.
Wall raised.
Spike planted. Last player standing. Switching sides.
We move as a unit, okay? Last thing I need is some hero messing things up.
Last player standing.
Stand tall. We are Valorant. We are fighters.
Hawk out! Blocking sight.
Shadows traveling.
Enemy spotted A.
We're going out.
Time to hunt.
Stand down.
Here.
Many enemies A.
Spike planted.
Stealing sight. Shadows traveling.
Hawk out! Blinded.
Last player standing.
Just let them try to catch me.
We go.
Hawk out!
I
Spike
have the
dropped.
spike.
Our spike carrier's down.
Spike down A.
Multiple enemies A. Night night.
Last player standing.
Taken out. Hawk out! I got the spike.
One enemy remaining.
Spike planted. Hawk out! Hawk out!
Wind, show me where to go.
I am everywhere.
Hawk out! Hawk out! Blinded.
Oi! I'm pissed.
Time to hunt.
Lights down.
Last player standing. Spike down A. Flawless. Match point.
Once more into battle. I'm not tired. Are you?
Hawk out! Blinded.
Reloading.
Last player standing. Flawless. Defenders win.
Right. Come to think of it, this would probably increase Aisha's responsibilities. There was also a good chance Eris would tire of looking after it at some point. Sorry, Aisha. It's fine. This was your decision. I really am sorry. I'll find some way to make it up to you, I promised. Well, I guess, her mood improved a bit after I ruffled her hair, although she didn't look terribly pleased about me messing up the style. Anyway, Eris, open the door, I commanded. Okay. Slowly, the door cracked open. Eris appeared on the threshold, frowning. She looked formidable, even while pregnant, like the king of pregnant women, or something. Silence fell as I glanced behind her. I gulped when I spotted the cat, collar around its neck, resting inside the room. There was no debating its feline nature, covered in dirt as it was, its ears pricked with the sound of the door opening, and it flicked its tail handsomely. Unfortunately, that wasn't the only thing I noticed. The first thing that captured my attention were its breasts. Huge hunkers about the size of Eris's. Although the clothes it wore were in tatters, they at least covered its breasts and groin. Those thick, muscular thighs were coated not in fur but sun-kissed flesh, smooth as the skin of a pear. Boss, it's been forever. You really saved my tail. I promise I won't forget this debt for the rest of my life. I found her during my morning walk and brought her home, Eris explained. Her name is Linnea. Linnea Didoldia. Previously an upperclassman, this beast woman had graduated from the University of Magic several years ago with top grades. Oh yes, I definitely remembered her. Well, this settles it. Throw her out, I said. No way. Eris slammed the door in my face. It took nearly an hour to coax Eris to open up again. We moved to the living room to discuss the situation. It turned out that Eris had discovered Linnea in the course of her routine walk with Leo. 5 months pregnant, her morning sickness had finally faded, so she'd resumed going out with Leo again. So her first return to exercise was a walk. I suspected it had to do with a strong sense of territory. Whatever the case, a moderate degree of exercise was good for a pregnancy. At any rate, it was during this walk that she passed by the slave market and an incident occurred. Linnea burst out of the shadows, with some shady-looking men in pursuit. Tragically, they grabbed her by the tail and captured her. Eris, having witnessed all of this, made a split-second decision. She whipped out her sword, cut the sorry bastards down, stole off with her prize, and made her triumphant return home. I saved her, so she's mine. We're keeping her, Eris insisted, sounding more like a brigand than a lady. Right. I'm Lady Eris's kitty now, mew, Linnea said from Eris's lap, where the latter was playing with her ears. Her entire body trembled in fear the whole time. Among beasts, the unspoken rule was to roll over for whoever was strongest. Well, that's all fine and good, but I want to know what you're even doing in the city, Linnea. And why are you in those rags? I recalled that she left school dressed in fine attire, setting off from the city, claiming she was going to become a merchant. Now, she wore threadbare rags, covered in grime. And, if we were being frank, she stunk. So glad you asked, mew. Thinking back, it was such a long, grueling, and tragic tale, sure to bring tears. Give me the short version, I said, interrupting. According to Linnea, after graduating and leaving Sharia, she tried to accomplish exactly what she claimed she would do, become a merchant. She gathered some goods in Azura Kingdom and brought them to the Northern Territories to sell. Then, she would bring things back from the Northern Territories to sell in Azura Kingdom. In short, she was acting as a traveling merchant. To accomplish all this, she bought herself a horse-drawn wagon, which put her into debt. She went further into debt getting funds to buy merchandise in the first place. Personally, I thought it made more sense to travel between neighboring villages at first to get a feel for the job, but Linnea was trying to make bank quickly. That ended in her debt exploding due to interest rates, to no one's great surprise, I'm sure. She spent her days dirt poor.
Beautiful smoke from Tui's too. And I think when Doombro said they have a surprise, I'm surprised that they didn't have anything cooked up, because this is the bog standard. They love to run the fade on this map, despite not having the Sova, which can counter the lockdown. They are so good at still making space in this situation and dealing with that combination. Makes it very unorthodox to play against, but one we haven't seen. We haven't seen Loud go up against them. In the past, you would have expected this to be a massive battleground for these two teams, but they just have not tested each other until now.
Unexplored waters between these two juggernauts finally clashing, this time with the stakes as high as they have ever been. Loud on the attacking side, a heavy lean towards A right now, as it seems like they're going to want to split into a lot of the teeth of what Na'Vi have on defense, but Zipam's the first to fall.
And Knife did not get the killjoy, so they still have those nanos available if they end up pouncing here. Angel did use his smoke. He's going to try to peek over towards A main, maybe get something into tree. But the rotate's getting pulled right now. And Louder working this very well against Na'Vi.
A little bit of a deep smoke.
30
As
seconds
another
left.
counter to allowing CNED and Angel to both drop out from heaven. No real idea of what's up there. He's got the dash proc, instantly has to reposition, 67 HP, looking for another angle. Finding comfort in the confines of the smoke, and CNED with the second, very clean. I mean, this 1-2 punch of CNED and Angel might have just secured the round. They've gotten almost all of them. Holy Les! Oh, he had to get one more, and he just wasn't able to do it. The high ground was too much. Na'Vi get the pistol, but fireworks out of the gate.
I was going to say, Angel and CNED saving them, but at the end of the day, it's Xiao. He came out fast through heaven there. Clean up that final kill, and good movement too, because if he falls, all of a sudden you have to play this little footsie game. Which, honestly, is how the round started too. Both these teams, after they got that initial pick in mid, waiting for smokes, TPing into them, playing with the dashes. Just looking and waiting for the teams to lose track of exactly what's going on the site. Well done from Na'Vi to allow that to happen. Those couple kills from CNED, huge.
Oh, I think on the other side of things too, very reminiscent of what we saw on Pearl. Les with a hot start, but the pistol lost. We'll see how they can convert. Aspas once again with the Marshall.
Yeah, early in these games, the Des touched on Les's performance at the beginning of Pearl 2. And overall, it felt like he was the guy trying to will them back into that map. Give them some energy. And it looked like a cohesive unit at the end, but at the beginning it was slow going. Trying to get their bearings about the game plan ahead of them. See if that same thing begins, because that would be real bad when you need every attack round you can get on this.
CNED looking for the challenge on the second. Sadak is bold to face. A little damage dealt. Angel's positioning here could be really nice. The first couple of shots are errant. He has to take a step back.
No pressure. He had on this Killjoy setup, and Zipon's knife is perfectly timed. Still not quite sure exactly what Loud are doing, though. And you're looking to see CNED actually spot into mid right now. Just because Angel and Xiao are actually really up close here. They could fall, and if they fall, that's two guns that are easily given back.
Scoop-upable, some might say, but I mean, it's just Loud that's getting picked to shreds.
Yeah, it's a tough setup to break,
left.
but
Yeah.
very risky one to go at anyways. And we're not going to see that magic that we saw from Loud in the first map. After that eco, it's a Prime Gaming flawless instead from Na'Vi.
But I do think as much as things change, there are a couple of things that remain the same. And much like we talked about Les and his hot start on map 1, we've got to talk about Angel's hot start on map 2. I mean, you imagine sometimes there flashes in the pan for the guy, and you go, well, that's not sustainable, right? You know you can't do that again, but it's an excellent start for the IGL.
Well, I think it is. People always describe it feast or famine.
Yeah.
And it's specifically here, the LCQ run on this map. Angel was doing a lot of feeding in this instance. Here so far, not so much. And starting on the defense, I think, is a different story.
Yeah, he's the one eating now.
Oh, early peek from CNED. Doesn't get any damage done to him, but does do a little to Sadak. A risky peek, and I think Sadak's going to try to clear up mid, knowing where the jet is, but there might be a trap here.
What's across? There's really nothing else on the other side. I mean, even if Xiao swings, he has to wait a little bit for reinforcements to arrive and spawn, which they've just now done.
Well, don't forget, too, Angel could have flashed at any moment from tree. And they will re-clear and go down mid right now. This is crazy. In the mid round.
Oh my gosh, CNED. Les tried countering at just the right. Oh my.
Be clear and go down mid right now. This is crazy.
Lot
In the mid
on
round.
Les. Oh my gosh, CNED. Les tried countering at just the right time, but he was overwhelmed.
I mean, what is that from CNED? It felt like 3 bullets. Sprayed wildly. Oh my God.
Hello. Talk about wild, talk about aggressive, ambitious, and bold, but perhaps it's enough. Only one found, and oddly enough, it was the person behind. CNED still with 3 in the other round for Na'Vi. The bonus secured.
Sprayed wildly. Oh my God.
Hello. Talk about wild, talk about aggressive, ambitious, and bold, but perhaps it's enough. Only one found, and oddly injured.
That's just crazy from the Turk. And that's a bonus converted from Na'Vi. That's a huge momentum swing. Loud need to. Again, it's so difficult to stay in this map if you're not going to start accruing a few attack rounds. And they need to come at some point.
I mean, given how this map plays, sometimes it feels like 4 rounds on attack is a win.
Especially when you have a little bit more standard of comps.
Yeah.
When you're not playing with any of the Viper or anything like that, which did come and go out of the meta.
Shadows traveling.
Talk about abandoning ideas too. Loud instantly after that one game they played against DRX, abandoning the breach comp that they tried. Look at this, they're getting aggressive again on Cat. Aspas here.
Oh, the paranoia was so good. I mean, that's the only thing that saved his life.
Yeah, he didn't know how close they were either, because he could have seen them for sure. CNED still dueling in mid.
The alarm bot is still up too, so if CNED wants to take a step back, he can reposition and know they're still covered with utility.
Oh,
No way.
that turret's not going to be able to get timing, but for a second there, it looked like Sugetsu might get picked off by Les, but it's passive from him. That looks like it's pointed at him.
Yeah. It looks like it's just staring. You're right.
30 seconds left.
The alarm bot's spotting mid. The turret cleared. The door follows too. You only got 2 members from Na'Vi back site. If Loud want to make a run at this with the pistols that they have in the Stinger and Tui's hands, they're going to have to do so with some ferocious velocity. Because reinforcements for Na'Vi are coming. The defense has started to rotate through spawn. They're starting to feel some of the pressure. 10 seconds left, and the spike still isn't fully out on site. That flash is so good out from Zipan, man. How do they get through this? The sheriffs are working. Sugetsu feeling some of the pressure. The spike not planted. The kills come through, and Na'Vi gets 4. Loud want to make a run at this with the pistols that they have in the Stinger and Tui's hands. They're going to have to do so with some ferocious velocity. Because reinforcements for Na'Vi are coming. The defense has started to rotate through spawn. They're starting to feel some of the pressure. 10 seconds left, and the spike still isn't fully out on site. That flash is so good out from Zipan, man. How do they get through this? The sheriffs are working. Sugetsu feeling some of the pressure. The spike not planted. The kills come through, and Na'Vi gets 4. Good out from Zipan, man. How do they get through this? The sheriffs are working. Sugetsu feeling some of the pressure. The spike not planted. The kills come through, and Na'Vi gets 4.
They still get all the damage done. Though from Loud, and remember that was an eco. That was just a couple of sheriffs spot up. So they still, I mean, despite the fact that this momentum's growing for Na'Vi, despite the fact that that scoreline is growing, that bank will take a hit there. So that's a success in my book if you're Loud on that eco.
Operator in the hands of CNED. 8-2 right now for the star from Na'Vi. He's got blades to work with too. Oh, that high low. I mean, that high low in the one-way too. Oh, that high low. I mean, that high low in the one-way is just too much. Angel's not able to find any value as Loud barrel through the defenses of Na'Vi.
CNED's trying to re-peek into this. He's so active, but the drone's still up, and he's tagged by it.
Laughing in the face of danger. Pure
He's
disrespect.
about time, though, for Shao to get on site.
Aspas falling. Shao with a really nice haunt.
That's an instant pop there. They're going to use the Hunter's Fury to get him out of that position.
Shao's dead. Shao's so dead.
So all that work for nothing.
Sugetsu's gone re-aggressing, and he might find the timing on Les. He's going to find the timing on the flank. They pulled that utility out, and Sugetsu almost gets a second.
But Tui's TP still maintains the space. They just got to get through, and they do. Wild sequence.
I mean, chaos ensuing in round 5. But Loud finally on the board.
I don't think that's how the round was drawn up.
No, I don't think so. I mean, what do you even choose to replay from that round?
I know.
I mean, what do you even choose to replay from that round?
I know, right? I do want to bring attention to Cowanzine again there. Taking a duel against Angel. That's the first duel. Cowanzine was 4-0 on first kills to first deaths when he was playing the Fade in the last map. And if he could continue that, that's the sort of thing that you look for some extra success as they push me.
Holy aggression. I mean, the Haunt found everyone. Fortunate for them, it was just one kill.
Yeah, but it's gained so much space in mid at the same time. Smoking tiles.
I mean, look at this crossfire. Sugetsu's here. Les is dead. They had seen it to help in case things got too messy, and that Nightfall's going to hit them all. The Seas, too, they've got the Prowlers. They can't get out.
They're so low.
They're so heavily suffocated by Na'Vi. The defense does not relent as Na'Vi get 5.
And the final kill there is CNET spamming his knives away through the smoke. The combination there of the Seas and that Nightfall decays them so much that everybody running out on site is 1 HP, despite not taking any damage up to that point. Just temporary damage. That's crazy.
My doubles.
That's the thing that you don't really calculate into the value of Fade in some instances, or even as a combination. It's not one that you think of very often.
Yeah.
Or even as a combination, it's not one that you think of very often. Often.
Yeah.
Up with a way to have a protocol against it on the fly.
And that's difficult to do.
And almost useless in some cases because they
Yeah,
might not
sure.
ever run it again.
Sure.
Wasted energy in a sense.
Turret out.
And force up. Light by from Loud. 3 rifles. Excuse me. Plus the Guardian too. Makes this still a very dangerous round.
I mean, what a cool setup. They had the paranoia out from B, the dash in towards B, and the flash from out tree from Zipan.
Yeah, and it's trying to go deep. Makes this still a very dangerous round.
I mean, what a cool setup. They had the paranoia out from B, the dash in towards B, and the flash from out tree from Zipan.
Yeah, and it's trying to go deep enough that it's the looking at the players. So he's basically flashing them from behind.
Blocking sight.
It's different variation on this Sharks attack pounce, but the thing is, it was just Les who was over there. He's already fallen. The rest of Loud towards A. Osplash is already out on site. He's going to have to turn that flash. They know where he is. Epic cleans him up, and it's once again Osplash.
Blocking sight.
It's different variation on this Sharks attack pounce, but the thing is, it was just Les who was over there. He's already fallen. The rest of Loud towards A. Osplash is already out on site. He's going to have to turn that flash. They know where he is. Epic cleans him up, and it's once again a slaughter. Another Prime Gaming flawless through for Na'Vi.
This is where I was afraid of in this map pool. Both of these maps, it feels like Na'Vi is taking advantage of a Loud squad that has lost confidence in their identity on these specific maps. Ascent is no different. It's a place where they lost many times recently, where it used to be their home ground. It used to be their old reliable. It used to be the one where they barely lost to anybody internationally or at home.
CNED, early challenge, has to dash away.
And these are the things that are difficult. Again, I'm saying, CNED constantly peeking places and never getting punished for it. So you have to be very careful how you approach the center of the map, or any extremities at all if you're Loud, and that's causing so much labored efforts in their defaults. Looks like Counting playing anti-flash for something to come more out on Cat. Instead, though, Na'Vi is taking this opportunity to swap players. Zippon started over towards B. CNED swaps his way back towards Market. And they leave Angel alone on A for a long time here.
CNED creeping up towards middle.
He peeks for info right now.
Calling my bot.
He would have gotten a lot, you're right.
And he just did. He just jump spot. And that's 3 players now from Na'Vi, where it was a second ago. Nobody except Angel. Now they're going to have everybody. Still time to
30
pivot.
seconds left.
Loud desperately need to get around on the board here. Remember, on the attacking side, if you get to 4, you'll take those. Look at that deep smoke. They want to push up.
It blocked the flash, though.
They're so aggressive into this, and they have no idea that Zipon's here. And you've got CNED, who's there too. The flash out, the swing, but what? What a response from Loud.
Player standing.
Perhaps finding comfort in desperation.
That's a big blunder there from Na'Vi. Might give room for Loud to get back into this game again. Zippon and CNED walked into the crossfire. Yes, there's a flash, but you're walking into a 50-50 angle.
I mean, they've just won so many of those 50-50s so far, though.
Both looking at the same direction, though. Trying to swing to help and deny the plant.
Yeah.
Where Aspas just stays window. Crossfire at its most basic. Look at that peek from Sadak. He doesn't stop running.
No charge. Don't get shot.
A couple style points are going to get Loud.
Eddie, straight to me. The only person.
Phil. A timeout out from Na'Vi. They're going to get Loud a second round and are going to draw a timeout out from Na'Vi. Yeah, that's just Phil.
Yeah, that's the other thing, too. That flash, they're running away from it already, right? The only person that's going to flash is Aspas on that angle, but he's playing in the window as an easy way to strafe away from it. And get right back on the line. So, yeah, that's, to me, the first mistake in an otherwise very strong half so far from Na'Vi. And it will cause actually a timeout here.
4-round lead still for the defense, and remember, they did win map 1. They've got Loud on the ropes, but you have to keep in mind.
I think more away from that.
Closer to the standard. Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. The knife takes flight, getting a little bit of info. Oh, that option.
It's a fight that CNED constantly taking. He's not exactly finding value, but he's constantly
applying pressure.
That's right, unless the same situation gets Sugetsu. That has not been a situation where Sugetsu has died before his util pops off in this map so far. So talk about a huge advantage here, because you have to re-bolster this B site.
CNED's really far ahead of this. He's got the op. He saw his dash too. When does he proc? Les has been good. Oh, where'd he go? He disappeared.
He's gonna peek off the turret. CNED knows. And the knife indicates a lot of market presence, especially spotting that it's empty. Loud, are you gonna go with that info or go towards the A side?
It seems like they want to go A. That paranoia just barely out of reach from Angel. I don't think it tagged.
Oh, he's up close. Angel could completely snuff this play.
And it seems like Loud are the ones who are sniffing out what's going on the other side.
Now it's CNED's turn.
Just up by himself.
That's dash still.
Spam out through the door, and he legged Sadak 5 HP. I mean, he's beaten, he's battered, but he swings out with the classic and he's flashed. Nobody can see a thing, but CNED falls. 10 seconds left. Loud established control, not just of the site, but Tui's puts his foot down mid. What can Zippon do? Nothing. Loud get a third.
A scramble in the final moments, but that's exactly what happens when you lose your sentinel on the B site early on in that one. And Les, huge in this one. What a spam onto CNED too. Somehow, some way, he was staying alive for so long. Tui's to close it out too. Feels a little inconsequential at the end of the day. Doom Bros can't be happy about that. Specifically, Sugetsu's first death there. And they're leaving tools up here for Loud. They still have that lockdown. Sugetsu has his, but oh, his setup is very deep spread. He's got nanos in mid, alarm bot on Cat, and a turret on B. Somehow he's keeping them all active. And he can start to play retake on both sides, despite Na'Vi playing full 3 players on A. That Shock just took down one of those nanos.
And the thing is, they don't know that it's nanos. You wouldn't normally be expecting that. It's often the alarm bot that's placed there.
Slight visual cue if you're watching it, but other than that, nothing to know if you've damaged it anyways.
Right. Somehow at the opener there took a ton of damage. 17 HP left in the round. See it smoke out. The drone's going to clear full A.
And spotting the alarm bot there is key, because that's not been there, remember.
Yeah. Do they push into that off of Angel's Paranoia? No. Not fully convinced of what's on the other side. They're going to fake this.
They just fake footsteps
left.
away.
Yeah.
More noise in mid too. This flash is going to be a nice line, and Zipon's dead. The timing awful.
The Paranoia on the other side too, and they've darted through this. Fastpass has gotten 2. Kawanzin joining in on the fun. And Na'Vi want none of it.
My ult is ready.
Insta-plant for Kawanzin, gets him his ult too, so even if the kills didn't come in, if they got that sight, got a counter against the lockdown, and once again, Loud maintaining the tools that they need to really start to balloon this. I mean, we're talking about 4 rounds on attack. They're getting there, and potentially even more.
Yeah, that's a much.
In this instance, look at these entries. Quick from Aspas. And Angel's just wandering through that nade because it's not smoked. He thinks he's going to be able to get on the angle, and all of a sudden he's in a nade. He has to push forward in that case.
Trying to catch a timing. Perhaps an unexpected one. Certainly doesn't go his way. Na'Vi still hanging on to a 2-round lead, but Loud have awoken. We talked about this fight mid and the value that Scenic could find. This time it's just a Marshall.
Where was Angel even standing there? I feel like he was on top of Dice.
Spike drop.
Xiao has this really aggressive angle.
Yeah, off the turret. That's on his right, too. That's going to take contact for him.
A lot of Loud members on the other side, but they're wise to it. They don't walk up dry. They flash the angle, and they get the space.
It's so interesting, too, here. I think they think that Na'Vi might have forced up, so they're using the lockdown, but there's not much behind this.
And Xiao just playing within inches of his life and ultimately finds his demise nonetheless. How do Na'Vi funnel out from this? Can they funnel out from this?
Look at Les, he's gotten all the way up market too. This is a flank possible, especially with this Paranoia. He could even start to run if he wants to.
Yeah, but Angel's on a flank too. Angel's on a flank, CNED's playing up on Switch.
And CNED thinks he's cleared close logs right now. Instead, it's a player in the market who can end everything.
Les is gonna do it on his own, isn't he? By himself. First shot a little bit labored, but finally meets its mark. Meanwhile, Aspas joining in on it. Les with 2 on the round, the third around the wall. Sugetsu cleans it up. He's gonna have to do it on his own. And yet again, Na'Vi crumbles.
This Loud comeback on this half is ferocious. Feels much like we saw in Pearl, but with a little bit more of a kick to it. How have we gotten so?
Meanwhile, Aspas joining in on yet again. First shot a little bit labored, but finally meet it up.
Kawanzin's own last round is gonna. Ooh, the different types of ults that have been up for so long. Sugetsu needs to find value out of his, but there's the Hunter's Fury up for Kawanzin. Look at this op from Tui's instead of Aspas here. Attack side up. With the flash coming in. Oh! A missed shot. Angel lucky to get away with his life again. That spot went up too as well. He's using all that bank. What is that?
I mean, when you've got that much money, it works. You see the Paranoia out towards mid, trying to catch Angel, but he's going to push in front of it. Instantly tucks back, though. The ult out from Sadak, but the swing out from CNED. Angel in a massive position to make an even bigger play.
Res coming up. Zipon, can he try to deny? I love this from Aspas, getting extra space, but can't get out now.
45 HP, he dashes back. Power in the jet mobility.
It's crazy that all this has happened still. 40 seconds left. Loud can pivot anywhere they want to. Especially now that Sugetsu's down. There's no KJ util on that B site despite it looking on the minimap. And they're going to commit to this A split. Tuiz has a crucial job to clear A main here. And that's what they're really careful of right now.
The timing on it's interesting because they're funneling out without having fully cleared it. Maybe hoping to get your timing on someone who might be there, but Zipan with 4 HP, down in hell, trying to stay alive. 10 seconds left on them to get the spike down, and it's all gone their way. Xiao left in a 1v3.
Info TP to try to catch him, which dodges the knife, but they should know he's in tree.
I mean, Common Zed's here with the Odin on the other side. Safety valves in place.
One way, just at the perfect time.
Yeah, I mean, such a frustrating situation to be in as a player. To realize there is no wiggle room. There is no way to take an advantage. It's another round for Loud, and we're tied at 6.
What an absolute shutdown at the end of this half. It has given energy to the Loud fans. It has
With me, but
Danger.
And although she supposedly tried to pay off her loans, bit by bit, she could only pay in such trivial installments that she didn't know when she would ever manage to return it all. Her life continued like that for a while, until one day she found some light at the end of the tunnel. One of the merchants associated with the company she was indebted to brought her an offer. "I notice you've been desperately trying to repay what you owe us, but from the looks of things, your sales aren't going very well. It's painful to see. I can't completely clear all your debts, but if you become a member of the company, the interest rate will drop a little, and it'll be much easier for you repay it at least. It costs 20 gold coins to become a member, but don't worry, I'll pay that sum for you. You can return the money to me later. I will need you to write me a promissory note just to be safe, but I trust you." Linnea agreed to the deal. I thought the whole thing sounded suspicious, but I guess flattery will get you everywhere, even into a kiddie's trust. Linnea purchased one of the company's member badges for 20 gold coins. Alas, that badge was a fake. When she showed it to the company, they looked at her like she was crazy. That was when she realized the man had scammed her. While the badge was fake, the promissory note she wrote was the real thing. Instead of reducing what she owed, she was instead a further 20 gold coins in debt. And Azure gold coins were the most valuable currency in the entire world. A loan of 20 coins meant exorbitant interest. Linnea was already in hot water because of all the interest from her other loans, so there was no way she could pay this one off, either. They confiscated her wagon and goods before apprehending her as well. They totally took me for a ride, then made me into a slave to boot. Mew. You'd think it would be more profitable to have someone paying the interest forever, so I had to assume this person had devised some way to make good money off turning her into a slave. Well, we'll leave that aside for now. Honestly, it was partly her own fault that she became a slave. Of course, a scam was a scam, meaning the person responsible was awful for what they'd done, but half the responsibility for her situation was still her own. Nevertheless, I wished Eris hadn't cut down one of the slave traders' crew. We had 2 underage girls in our house, and babies too. We couldn't have a bunch of lowlifes on our tail. "Now what do we do?" I murmured. "Boss, you gotta save Mew." "I'll do anything, Mew. I don't want to be a slave, Mew." Linnea put her hands together and pleaded her case. Seeing her dressed in those threadbare clothes with a collar around her neck was kind of erotic. "Linnea, did they have their way with you?" Before she could hop to her feet, I was already on my back, staring up at the ceiling. A violent Boreas punch had knocked me, and the chair I was sitting on, to the floor. "Rudius? How dare you ask something like that?" Eris barked. "She has a point, Rudy," Sylphie agreed. That was a really insensitive thing to say. Aisha glared at me. "Big brother, you're a big creep." After that thorough bashing from the women present, I quickly said, "I'm terribly sorry." Better to apologize earnestly. Yep. That was the best call. They were right, that was crass of me. That sure was rude, Mew. I'll have you know, I'm an untouched virgin, Mew. Dunno why, but they said I'd be more valuable that way, so they didn't bother, Mew. Oh yeah? That's a relief. Why did I even ask that question to begin with? It just occurred to me, and I wanted to check. I didn't consider the question would only make her relive the trauma if she had been assaulted. I needed to be more considerate. Anyway, they said she'd be more valuable like this, guess even this world treasures virginity. I mean, there's even a unicorn in the Great Forest that's totally obsessed with girls' purity. I got to my feet. My nose ached from being punched, and when I pressed my fingers to my nostril, they came away, coated in blood. Sylphie hurriedly used some of her healing magic on me. Well, anyhow, this is troubling, I said again. Eris had already killed some of the slave traders' people. They probably already knew what she looked like and might return for revenge. We had to do something to stop that. Should we return Linnea and try to smooth things over? Or should we make an enemy out of these slave traders and destroy them completely? If we chose that path and they somehow kidnapped Norn, I'd be incredibly unhappy. Though I wouldn't be able to sleep soundly at night if I abandoned Linnea, either. She was a friend, after all. Excuse us, called a voice from the front entrance, interrupting my thoughts. I didn't recognize it, but Linnea flinched the moment she heard it and leaped up, scrambling to hide behind the couch. It's them. It was the slave traders, apparently. I made my way to the front door. You have our slave in there, don't you? We already know she's here. I'm afraid I don't know what you're referring to, Lilia said. She stepped in to deal with them before I got there. Please leave. 3 people were at the door. The one in front was short and stout, perhaps a dwarf. Behind him were 2 musclemen, one bald and the other sporting a mohawk. An air of violence roiled off the 2 like a suffocating cologne. They looked like Adon and Samson from Chowaniki. Don't be like that. There's no other house in town with a gigantic white dog and a red-haired pregnant woman who can slice a man in 2. Lady Eris does tend to resort to wanton violence, so perhaps what you are saying in that regard is true. However, we have no slaves in the house. As I said, please leave. The bald man clicked his tongue in annoyance at Lilia's fearless rebuttal. He shoved the leader aside and stepped forward, reaching for Lilia. Listen here, you old bag, if you keep having that attitude with us. Lilia flinched as his hand came violently down upon. Hold up, nothing, because the shorter man latched onto his arm and stopped him. Don't put your hands on her. Don't you dare. That's the one thing I can't permit, boss, what's the problem? We always do this kinda, are you an imbecile? That made right there is the Rudius Greyrat's wet nurse and the mother of one of his sisters. If you leave a mark on her, your entire family will be annihilated for it, I warn you. The bald man's face twitched in fear as he glanced at Lilia. Then why'd ya have us come along then? Obviously, because if things go awry and the Berserker Sword King suddenly appears, I expect you to be my shield. That's cruel of ya. At that point the short man finally took note of me, his entire face relaxing into a smile as he rubbed his hands together. What an unexpected surprise, Mr. Rudius. His voice was grating and unpleasant. No doubt he was taking that smarmy pose to drive home the point that they hadn't actually put their hands on Lilia. As he surmised, I would have been furious if I'd seen them get violent with her. Would that be enough for me to murder their kin? No, but I couldn't necessarily say the same for Eris. Miss Lilia, I will take it from here, I said. Very well, my lord. Lilia bowed and took a step back. It looked like she planned to linger. Yes, well, such an honor to make your acquaintance, Mr. Rudius, said the man, still rubbing his hands together. He dipped his head in my direction. My name is Kincho, you see, and I deal with any friction that happens at the Valvalid shop associated with the Riem Group. An honor indeed. As you already know, I'm Rudius Greyrat. Kincho sounded like Kinchal, which was coincidentally an insecticide in Japan perfect for killing mosquitoes. Well, Mr. Kincho, to what do I owe the pleasure? I could already guess what he was here for, but I decided to ask anyway. It would be pretty ridiculous if he told me he was here for anything other than Linnea. Yes, well, you see, Mr. Rudius. One of our slaves recently ran away. What kind of slave? I asked. A Dodoldian girl. One with great combat skills and some mastery over magic as well. A top-quality slave. Did you hear that, Linnea? He called you top quality. He thinks pretty highly of you. And see, some employees of ours gave chase, only to meet a grim end. They were all cleanly cut in half. Interesting, definitely Eris's work. I did feel a bit guilty about that. Those slave traders were just doing their job. It would have been one thing if they were killed by their own slave, but instead they were murdered by someone completely unrelated to the situation. That did kind of suck. Well, no need to dwell on that, the little man continued. All a part of the job. People lose their lives every day to violence in this line of work. I can hardly hold that against you. Especially given you're the underling of the Dragon God, the second strongest of the 7 great powers, and a close acquaintance of Azuric Kingdom's next king. I appreciate you being so understanding. So he was terrified of both Orsted and Ariel. Connections really do mean everything no matter what world you're in. Thank you, CEO Orsted and Section Chief Ariel. With their influence in play, these negotiations were looking pretty promising. That said, I wasn't very public about my working relationship with Orsted. I guess those rumors had spread from somewhere. But, you see, Mr. Rudius, yes? This slave of ours is just a wee bit valuable, you see. I nodded. Yes, you did say this slave is of top quality, as I recall. Personally, no matter how strong she was, Linnea was still a hopeless idiot, so I didn't see her being of much real use. Not that I had any right to judge others by their intelligence, or lack thereof. If this was just your average slave, we'd be happy to offer her to you, no strings attached, and invite you to visit our establishment again in the future. But sadly, we can't part with this one so easily. She's already got a buyer, see? And would that buyer happen to be a certain Mr. BG? I guessed. Yes. Yes, precisely. Mr. Rudius, I am impressed how readily you guessed it correctly. In other words, Linnea was supposed to go to Eris's family. She's a princess of the Didoldia tribe, can fight and use magic, and she's a beautiful, if impertinent, virgin. When I told the buyer that, they immediately offered 300 Azuran gold coins as a down payment. I wasn't sure if it was James or one of his sons who was responsible for this, but either way, the Greyrat family had a serious obsession with beast folk. Honestly, if they had the extra coin to waste on buying slaves, they should be using it to fund the rebuilding efforts in the Fitoa region. Then again, Eris had fallen for Linnea at first sight, too. So maybe it was in her family's nature to open their wallets whenever they saw limited merchandise that they'd never have a chance to own again if they passed up the first opportunity. A slave worth this much is rare indeed. We can't quietly let her go without lifting a finger. I can see your point, I said. Yes, I hope you can understand. Even if we wanted to back down, we simply can't. Getting our hands on her cost us a pretty penny in the first place. I stared silently at him. Acquiring her cost them too. Well, it's true, if they lose too much because of this, they'll have to shut down. Not that it affected me at all if they went under, but I wasn't eager to make them resent me for it, either. Come to think of it, Mr. Rudius, as I was lost in thought, Kincho flashed a huge smile at me. As I remember, you have a younger sister and a wife going to the University of Magic here, yes? It would be a shame if things got uncomfortable for them. Hold on, I interrupted. Are you threatening to do something to Norn and Roxy? If you put your hands on them, I won't show any mercy. I'll destroy all of Renoa Kingdom if that's what it takes to hunt you down. Forget what I said. Forget I said anything. Of course, you realize, Mr. Rudius, I have no desire to make an enemy out of you. I'm all about love and peace. I want us to be on good terms, I promise. Yes, I would like the same, which is precisely why I am standing here talking to you. Right, of course. Which is why I'd appreciate it if you would return that slave. We have no intention of putting our lives at risk by messing with you. But, well, you understand my dilemma, don't you? If we can't get her back, it'll be our heads on the chopping block. If we are doomed to die either way, we might as well try fighting, yes? I understood what he was getting at, and I was just as flummoxed as he was. Any goodwill his company had would be lost if they cancelled an order after getting 300 Azuran gold coins as an advance payment. And based on the size of the deposit, they might have forked a considerable sum over to secure her for sale. If they lost her, that money was sure to bankrupt them. Faced with their business crumbling, they'd probably resort to anything to save it, no matter how grim their chances. There was nothing more frightening than a cornered animal. Well, not much I can do, I guess. It was Linea's own stupid mistakes that had landed her in this mess. She'd borrowed more than she could pay back, let her loans bloat with interest, and then fallen for a ridiculously obvious scam. She'd made her own bed. Probably best for her to go to the Boreas household and consider it like a prison sentence. At least none of the beast maids I saw during Sorrow's time seemed to be suffering. There'd be no backbreaking labor, either. Sure, she'd probably be subjected to some sexual stuff, but at least the masters of the house were handsome, like Philip and Eris. They would probably even pamper her, given their penchant for beast folk. If I requested that they treat her well, that would probably work. Yep, sounds good. Let's go with that. Very well, I understand, I said. Do you truly? Yes. I'll immediately go get Linnea for you, was what I had wanted to say, but I swallowed the words the moment I turned around. My eyes met someone else's at the top of the stairs. Lucy, my beloved daughter, was peeking through the railing above, worriedly watching us from the shadows. After a very, very long pause, I finally breathed out, Miss Lilia? Yes, what may I do for you, my lord? Was it right to bend to their intimidation, bow my head and obediently hand Linnea over? My little girl was watching, the anxiety plain on her face. As her father, could I really hand over the terrified, trembling kitty that had turned to us for protection? No, obviously not. Go into my room and fetch all the money from my safe, I said. As you command. Lilia was quick. With hurried footsteps, she disappeared deep into the house, returning moments later with an enormous bag. I felt bad for making her lug something so heavy. I pulled the bag open. Its contents had been separated into numerous tiny bags stuffed full. I picked one up and tossed it to Kincho. What's this? He eyed it warily, peeking inside. His face paled. Magic stones, I explained. If you take that bag to the proper place, you can fetch 500 Azuran gold coins for its contents. And here, have another. I threw a second one over to him, which he scrambled to catch. I suspect the Dodoldia girl isn't the only one you have. Have you got an Adoldian princess with you as well? Those two are always together, after all. No, we only have one such slave, he assured me. Lying isn't going to do you any favors. I tossed him another bag, which he caught, but the confusion on his face only grew more pronounced. Just to let you know, if I have to burn your entire shop to the ground to find her, I won't bother offering you money again later. Kincho blanched. I am being honest, I swear. Our only slave is that one Dodoldian girl. Just the one. Well, it was worth asking, but apparently Linnea and Persina really had parted ways. While the former tried her cards at being a traveling merchant, the latter had probably returned home to be the chief of their people. So they wouldn't have been caught together. Persina was probably safely home in the Great Forest. If you say so. In that case, keep that in exchange for Linnea, I said. What? All 3 bags? Not enough for you? Shall I add another one? Or would you rather a magic item instead? I reached for another tiny bag. I'll give you 2,000 gold coins worth of jewels if that's what it takes. I'll show you how much money I've earned this past year, if that's what you want. No, this is more than enough. No need to be bashful. I'm often away from home, and I'd hate for anything to happen to my family while I'm not around. You understand that, don't you? Yes, I do. I had to drive the point home, just in case. Negotiation by coercion, if you will. And I'd like to be on good terms with you all in the future, especially if the Adoldian girl I mentioned happens to become a slave or something. Or if such a thing were to happen to one of my sisters somehow. I'm just trying to coax you into showing a little consideration for me. Makes sense, yes, your message is crystal clear. Of course we'll show you consideration. Should I throw in a magic item after all? I have a hat with a gem near the band that glows and can act as a flashlight. Kincho's entire body trembled, face contorted in fear as he lowered his head. I understand. We'll sell her to you. You've more than compensated us. We have no intention of making an enemy out of you. So please, no more threats. Pleased we could reach an agreement. I won. A victory bought with coins, or gems, in this case. Pleased as I was, I didn't want any bad blood between us. Or with the Boreas family, either. I'll pen a letter to the Boreas family for you. Return here in a few days for it, and you can bring me a receipt while you're at it. Yes. That would be a big help. The moment he finished speaking, Kincho sped off, dragging his 2 muscle heads with him. Oh boy. I got a little too worked up and blew through a ridiculous amount of money. 1,500 coins worth of magic stones? I could only imagine the reason Lilia had said nothing thus far was because she was exasperated. My lord. Miss Lilia, that was splendid work. Thank you. She smiled slightly and bowed. So she was willing to forgive my overspending, but I wasn't sure if Aisha would. Maybe I should try to convince Orsted it was a necessary work expense and that I need compensation. At any rate, that matter was settled. Did you see that just now, little Lucy? Daddy's perfectly capable of being assertive with people when he needs to be. So if you ever find yourself in a tight spot, I'll jump in to save you like I did for Linnea. You needn't worry at all. Just fly right into Daddy's arms. When I turned around, no one was there. Lucy had disappeared from her spot at the top of the stairs. My entire body slumped with disappointment. Regardless of my personal feelings, I had managed to save Linnea, and she would be living with us from now on, as a slave. End of the 2nd chapter. If you like my content, become a member of the channel. You can leave a donation by clicking the Super Thanks button. Thank you very much for your support. Chapter 3. The Entrance Ceremony and the Student Council President. In fact, Linnea began working as a maid in our house. I was perfectly content to let her fend for herself, but all things aside, Linnea was still a friend. If she was in trouble, it was only right to help her. Obviously. Admittedly, I had considered throwing her to the wolves, but I didn't follow through with it, which meant it didn't count. Also, Aisha was against letting her go free. After paying the enormous sum we did for her, she upheld that it would be a waste to throw Linnea out. I know you're earning quite a bit, but money is still precious. I'm going to have Miss Linnea work here until she pays off every last coin she owes, Aisha insisted. Worsted paid me irregularly, and usually in the form of magic items or magic stones. After living through time loop after time loop, he probably knew every secret in this world. Naturally, he could easily round up enough money to take care of me for the rest of my life. That didn't change the fact that 1,500 Azuran gold coins was a huge sum of money from my perspective. I mean, that was more than I paid for this house. Yeah, Eris said, nodding along. I don't care if she is your friend, I'm not handing her over. So she never had any intention of letting Linnea go. If I had actually tried handing her to the slave traders, she probably would have stormed out, sword swinging from her waist, and killed them all before I could blink. Still, I rebuked her for killing those men, slave traders or not. I didn't care whether such people lived or died, I cared whether anything happened to Eris while she was pregnant. You never know. Murdering someone while pregnant could result in being haunted by evil spirits. I insisted that she settle things by invoking my name or Ariel's the next time something like this happened, although I knew that her sword would take care of the problem before she bothered to open her mouth every time, nevertheless. That was just the kind of woman Eris was. I'd pretty much given up trying to change that aspect of her. Well, I'm glad things turned out the way they did. That's exactly how I'd have expected you to handle it, said Sylphie. She had no qualms about hiring Linnea. She knew that the two of us were friends, and in fact, she praised me for putting so much importance on friendship. Said Leo. I had no idea what he was saying, but Linnea seemed to get it. Yeah, I understand, Lord Leo. I'm perfectly fine being at the bottom of the totem pole, Mew. I'll do what I'm told, Mew. Please feel free to work me to the bone. Linnea expressed no confusion over the holy beast's presence here. Apparently Leo had already explained it to her. I had no idea how exactly he'd relayed the situation, nor had I really asked much about what being a holy beast even meant in the first place. It sounded as though Linnea would be beneath Leo in the hierarchy now, strange as that was. I kinda felt bad for her, being of lower status than a dog. Linnea's salary was 2 Azuran silver coins a month, although one of those would go towards repayment of her debt, so she actually only received a single silver coin. As part of her employment, she'd be provided with meals and a place to sleep. Eris jumped in to say that she'd personally keep Linnea in her room. Linnea was supposed to be working under Aisha, but she was pretty much primed to become Eris's personal pet. Anyway, only 1 Azuran silver coin a month, it was generous pay considering the cost of living around here. On the other hand, considering it only amounted to a single Azuran gold coin a year, she'd have to work here for the next 1,000 years to return what she owed. Are you really okay with this, Linnea? Well, beggars can't really be choosers, and you did save Meow. I hope you'll take good care of Mew for many, many long years to come. Linnea was resigned to her fate. Like an antelope who found their neck in the jaws of a cheetah, she remained limply draped over Eris's lap as the latter played with her tail. Well, if she says it's fine with it, I guess there's no issue. Roxy returned home shortly after that, and expressed no opposition. Like Sylphie, she spoke approvingly when heard I'd paid money to save my friend. At least until she heard the ridiculous amount it had cost, at which point she began eyeing me extremely suspiciously. Did you really want her that badly? Because she's a princess or virgin or whatever? Fortunately, it didn't take too long to dispel that misunderstanding, but as usual, no one had any faith in my downstairs brain. The next morning, Roxy and I set out for the University of Magic. Since there were 2 of us, we decided to go by foot rather than ride on Dillo. The snow crunched under our shoes as we walked. It had been a long time since I'd stopped taking classes there, and I'd also been given an exemption, so I didn't have to show up to our monthly homeroom either. I had no reasons to go to campus any longer, but today, I had business with Zenoba and Cliff. After passing through the path lined with magic-resistant bricks, rows of trees on either side, we found ourselves before the founding headmaster's bronze statue. Seeing the cluster of buildings around us made me emotional. After all, when I first came here, I'd been afflicted with ED. All right, Rudy. I'm headed this way, said Roxy. Okay. Work hard today. You too, Rudy. As the 2 of us were about to go our separate ways, someone squeaked, Professor Roxy is with a guy. I glanced in the direction of the voices, and spotted a group of people moving between the dormitory building and main school building, pointing at us. Wait, don't tell me. Is that Professor Roxy's husband? What, so the legends are true? That's Mistress Norn's older brother? It's my first time laying eyes on him. He's surprisingly handsome. I was being treated like an exotic animal at the zoo. Still, I heard that last part. Handsome, I noticed Roxy staring pointedly at me. No, you got it all wrong. I was just flattered to have a young girl praise me like that and was letting it go to my head, that's all. Pardon me for doing this, Roxy said as she suddenly slipped her arms around me, then turned to the students to flash them a peace sign. They squealed as they disappeared into the main school building. I'm making it clear you belong to me, said Roxy, releasing me from her embrace. Her ears were bright red. Apparently, even though she'd done it of her own volition, she was now embarrassed. Was it wrong that I did that? I stared at her silently. Of course not. I did belong to her. If she wanted to brag about that, I more than welcomed it. In fact, my heart was pounding like that of a young girl deeply in love. I planted a kiss on her cheek, enjoying how soft her skin was. Why are you doing that all of a sudden? At a place like this, even, it's a kiss to wish you good luck. All right then, yes. Well, message received. I will be off, Rudy. Stiffly and gallantly as a robot she marched toward the staff building. I watched her go before heading off toward the research building myself. A little too early, maybe? I wondered to myself. Cliff still hadn't arrived at the research building by the time I got there. He was a parent now, so no doubt he was busy. On the other hand, Elise had promptly withdrawn from the university after giving birth. She had only enrolled to find a man anyway, so now that she'd found one and had a child with him, it was goodbye education. Many would judge her for it, but everyone had their own reasons for attending the university. Personally, I wanted to respect Elise and her choices. Nonetheless, with Cliff absent, I had free time on my hands. Perhaps it would be better to visit Zenoba first instead. Although, considering it was early enough that even the diligent Cliff hadn't arrived at the school, I might only be making a nuisance of myself. Yeah, better to save my visit to Zenoba for this afternoon. Besides, showing up unannounced often ended in embarrassment for the both of us. It was better to stick to my original plan of visiting Cliff first, before going to see Zenoba. I had wandered outside, lost in thought. The snow crunched beneath my feet as I walked, and I soon discovered a crowd of people in the courtyard. I went over, curious as to why so many were gathered. The headmaster stood on a brick stage, giving a speech. Magic, however, is different. Magic has a future. We will retake the magic system that we have lost, and combine the current incantation style to bring forth a new evolution with which, I was pretty sure I'd heard those words before. It didn't take long for me to figure out where, my own opening ceremony. Is it already that time of year? Which year would I be in by now, anyway? My 5th year? No, my 6th? Although I only attended classes in my 1st and 2nd year, I still wanted to attend graduation when it rolled around. Sylphie had similarly realized it would be a waste to not be around for hers after she withdrew from the university. Come to think of it, if I'm a 6th-year student, that means Master Silent 7-star already graduated, I guess. I wondered if she had attended her own graduation ceremony. I couldn't imagine she had. Nanahoshi had spent the past few years preoccupied with learning summoning magic. She hadn't asked for my help yet, so either she was getting all the help she needed from Perugius or she simply hadn't reached the experimental stage. In any case, apparently she'd only enrolled in college to use their facilities, so perhaps she wasn't interested in attending her graduation. It was also possible she wanted to wait to have her graduation ceremony when she finally returned to Japan. There was something that still worried me regarding Nanahoshi. My future self hadn't gone into details, but he had mentioned her ghastly end. I'd have to pop in and check on her when I found the time. I could bring some rice balls and potato chips when I did. Next, our student council president has some words of her own for our new students. The headmaster's speech ended while I was lost in thought. He kept one hand pressed to his wig as he retreated to the line of professors. Upon closer inspection, I spotted Roxy sitting in the middle. Her posture was perfect and dignified, befitting her role. It makes me want to get up and brag to all the new students that this blue-haired beauty is my wife. Should I do it? Should I announce it for all to hear? It's her. That's the university's most renowned. She's so tiny. She's not even an adult yet, is she? Bet she hasn't known the touch of a man, either. Now that the headmaster's speech was over, the new students were whispering excitedly amongst themselves. What's all the fuss about? I wondered. I glanced up at the stage and Norn was standing in its middle, with 2 people behind her, an extremely tall demon girl and an extremely muscular beast man. Hello, everyone. I was chosen this year to be the student council president. I'm a 5th year, and my name is Norn Greyrat. Norn was the student council president? That was the first I'd heard of it. I did know she was in the student council, but her ascension to the presidency must have happened in some time in the past months. While I'm still very inexperienced, I want to do my utmost to fulfill the duties given to me, Norn said. The crowd refused to quiet even when she started speaking. Norn didn't have the charisma Ariel had that allowed her to silence everyone when she spoke. Oh well, I thought. I'll just have to use a little bit of magic to shut them up for her. As I scanned my surroundings, I noticed someone eyeing Norn salaciously. I recognized him. Pretty sure he was in her fan club, in fact. But what the heck was he doing here? He definitely wasn't a new student. Silence, echoed the beefy beastman's angry voice. The crowd instantly fell silent. Thank you, Gilbert, said Norn. It was nothing. She continued with her speech. You have come from all corners of the world to this university. Among you, I am sure there are some who have led lives I cannot even begin to imagine. However, while you reside at this university, you are a student here. That means you must conduct yourself accordingly and uphold our rules. I was also pretty sure I'd heard this speech somewhere before. Something about abiding by school regulations even if they differed from one's own sense of what was normal. When I first enrolled, Ariel had been the student council president and had given a similar speech. It seemed like the general theme of the president's speech was pretty fixed. And that is all I have to say. I hope you all enjoy your lives here as students. Norn bowed and left the stage. She walked with purpose, each step full of confidence, and our eyes met. In that moment, she missed one of the steps and crashed to the ground. Snickers erupted from the crowd. What a shame. If she'd only kept it up for a few seconds longer, they'd have all regarded her as a sophisticated student council president. Strangely, the lewd gazes directed at her intensified after that blunder. The guy from her fan club seemed thoroughly pleased, too. Clearly this world didn't lack for fans of clumsy girls either. So our student council president is only in her 5th year. Norn sure had worked hard to get where she was. As her brother, I could hold my head up high. If Paul were here, he'd probably be hiding in the bushes with one of those super telephoto lens cameras on a tripod, recording every second of her big moment. It filled me with such emotion. Norn had poured her effort into so many things, her studies, swordsmanship training, and the student council. That settles it. I've got to give it my all, too. I need to do everything it takes to protect my family from the man god's grubby hands. So this is the Norn Greyrat I've heard so many rumors about? She's a C. No, if I take her potential into account, perhaps a B, said a nearby voice, completely destroying the sentimental moment I'd been having. What the heck is this jerk's problem? I turned to look, and was met with the sight of a devastatingly handsome man. He was probably only about 15 himself. Long elf ears hid beneath his golden blonde hair, and, did I mention he was devastatingly handsome? I'm talking Ariel tier good looks here, with a face so dazzling it was near impossible to gaze upon him directly. Okay, well, yeah, no wonder he was so conceited with a face like that. With those looks, he outshone even Luke, the most handsome of the Greyrat men. If this man was S rank, then Luke would be A, and Norn would be about B. Everyone said she was top tier in this school, so I was hopeful, but, that's it, whatever the reality of it was, it still wasn't right for him to make comments like that. He was handsome, sure, but looks weren't everything. I mean, look, there's a bunch of upperclassmen glaring this way. They obviously think Norn is the best in the world, and now they've called some friends over. I had no idea where they'd been hiding, but there were 3 of them now, and they were peering at him as they talked. Bro, that dude is yikes, for real. For real for real? He was talking smack about Norn? No joke? Legit. For real for real. That was the gist of their conversation. Ignore that I've dubbed over their actual voices with my own little rendition. I hated bullying, and this elf boy was only a puny first year, but at the same time, the fan club guys hated my guts, so they probably wouldn't listen to what I had to say. They're already looking over this way like, please don't even try to stop us. This is our fight. They looked like they'd also drag me to the rooftop and rough me up if I didn't toe the line. If that's all she amounts to, I bet her older brother, Rudius, is nothing special either, the elf boy added. I couldn't argue that point, I was nothing special. But let's leave me out of this, okay? I already know my looks can't match up to yours. He turned his head and our gazes met. You agree with me, don't you? He's asking me? Well, sure, I guess, I said, not entirely sure how to respond. Rudius is no big deal, I suppose. But Norn is really doing her best, you know, snorted the boy. Sorry, I forgot that the people of this city are all terrified of Rudius. But you needn't worry. My name is Rayfort. I'm the son of the elf village's chief, Magnafort. You won't have to suffer under the thumb of Rudius's oppression anymore. Thank you for the polite introduction, but that just made it awfully hard to introduce myself. Now what? Guess I can call myself Ruckwagmire for now? I'm not like the rest of you or even Norn, he continued. I'm a scholarship student. The only one in the last few years, in fact. Not that it should be any great surprise, I have been undertaking special education to become the next elven chief, makes sense. So he's like Linnea and Persina. This little prince must have traveled far from the great forest to come here and learn about distant human society. I swear, I will be top dog at this university. And that Norn girl? I'll make her my woman. Yeah, that was one thing I wasn't going to allow. No matter how rough he might have it in this new environment, he wasn't allowed to take Norn away that easily. Her big brother wasn't going to simply stand by and watch. All you need to do is stick with me. I promise you'll be duly rewarded. Right, I mumbled back. Was that speech supposed to convince people to become his lackeys? I didn't see how it was compelling at all, but there were no small number of envious gazes boring into me. I was more concerned that this man was planning to organize against Norn. As Norn's older brother, what was I supposed to do? Was it better to nip this problem in the bud so the boy didn't have a chance to oppose her? Or was that overstepping? Was that me being too overprotective? Norn had secured a spot for herself in the university on her own. Rayfort claimed he was a candidate for future chief of his village, but he didn't hold any political influence in this country. Besides, if he tried anything, the fan club would intervene. I felt like leaving him to his own devices would work out fine, but was that really the best course? I can't let that slide, said a voice, interrupting. Someone had swooped to my rescue. I peered over my shoulder, trembling with anticipation, but... Who the heck are you? Name's Mianael, son of the Dwarven chief Bianael. A new student, by the look of it. As conceited as he was only half my height, and very clearly had the face of an adult man, with a tiny beard growing in. The man was quite obviously a dwarf, as he claimed. Think you're the only scholarship student? Guess again. I'm a special student too, starting this term, so that's the part he was objecting to. Rayfort's eyes widened as he peered down at the dwarf. Me, I can't believe it's you. Ray, it's been a while. It seemed the two were already acquainted. The Elven and Dwarven territories bordered one another. So it wasn't surprising they'd seen each other before, since they were both sons of their respective chiefs. So what you mean to say is we're the only 2 scholarship students this year? Rayfort tried to clarify. Mianael chuckled. Nope, that's not right either. There was someone else hiding in Mianael's shadow. It was a young boy, who must have also been a dwarf. No. He was most likely a human, just very young. About 10 years old, from the look of him. His features suggested he was from Azura, and I felt like I'd seen that face before. Go on, introduce yourself, the boy stammered. My name is Granulzofen Azura. I'm the second son of Azura's first prince Gravelzofen Azura. That was surprising. This boy was actually Gravel's son. What was he here for? Revenge? For what happened in Azura? Was he supposed to be an assassin sent to take me down? Seemed a bit late for that. And would they really send someone so young to do the deed? My father seems like he's on the verge of losing his bid for the throne, so he figured I'd be in danger if I stayed. That Trax Gravel must have realized Ariel might take his son's life, so he sent him away. If this was his second son, then perhaps his oldest had been sent to another country? No, something wasn't right about that. Renoa Kingdom was sympathetic to Ariel's cause. Perhaps he'd been sent here as Ariel's hostage. And not that this aside is necessarily important, but was there some rule I didn't know about saying that every big shot's son had to announce their father's name? I see, so you have your own complicated circumstances. The elf boy nodded to himself. I was actually chased out of my village after some incidents, so I guess the 3 of us are in the same boat. Excuse you, the dwarf sniffed. I wasn't chased out of my village for any special reason. I'm the 3rd son, that's all. Since I've nothing to inherit, I decided to take my chances here. Yes, I understand. Everyone has their secrets that they don't wish to share. I am sure you heard that one certain rumor, didn't you? You did too? The handsome elf boy, crap, what was his name again, threw his arms around Mianael and Granul's shoulders. Well, we're all scholarship students here. Let's look out for one another, yes? If we throw our lot in together, coming out on top at this school will be no mere dream. Agreed? Right, well, I hope we can be friends, Granul muttered awkwardly. I had no idea what was going on, but at least the new students were making fast friends at the entrance ceremony. Such a beautiful scene. As for the elf boy badmouthing Norn, well, I'd let that slide for now. People had a habit of trying to carve out a niche for themselves when they first started school. If I thought of those remarks about Norn being B-rank as the mutterings of a pre-adolescent who thought he was hot stuff, I felt more amusement than anger. Above all, I wished them luck. I see there's a bunch of people gathered again this year, a voice burst through the crowd, ruining what was otherwise a sentimental scene. I recognized that voice. It belonged to someone who, a few years back, had been one of the university's worst delinquents. A girl with cat ears had her hands stuffed in her pocket as she pushed through the crowd, intimidating those she passed as she made her way toward me. Linnea. She was supposed to be attending to her duties back home, so what had she come here for? Isn't that Mistress Linnea? Who? You know, the head honcho a few years back. You mean the delinquent? But why is she here? She should have graduated already. Whispers erupted around us. Linnea made her way straight to me. Heya, boss. Hello yourself. What did you come here for? Lady Roxy forgot her lunchbox, so I came to deliver it, mew. I dropped by the staff room and they said she'd be here. That made sense, although it wasn't even lunchtime yet. Aisha must have worked fast to send Linnea so quickly. Or perhaps Roxy forgetting her lunch wasn't all that rare. Incidentally, I hadn't packed lunch either. It wasn't that I didn't want to eat home-cooked food for lunch. I'd opted out of doing it today since eating out with friends was, in my opinion, just another facet of communication. An awkward silence fell as I noticed the two boastful boys from earlier, the dwarf and elf, were suddenly averting their eyes and staring nervously at the ground. Hey, what the devil is going on? I thought she'd gone back to the Great Forest. Well, that's what I heard. Granel interjected anxiously, glancing at the other boys' faces. What's going on? Linnea finally took note of their presence. She amiably waved a hand at the two boys. Heya, Ray, Michigan. The two flinched and glanced the other way. Apparently, the three of them already knew each other. Hey. When'd you guys make your way here from the Great Forest, Mew? Hasn't it been like a whole 10 years? Man, how the time flies, Mew. Doing well for yourselves? Hey. Why were you looking away like that? I'm over here. Crap, this could get bad. She has that look in her eyes that she always does when she starts picking a fight with people. The kind of look a cat gives to the prey it's stalking. And now you've got that poor boy Granel shaking in his boots. Sorry, I think you have the wrong person, Rayford insisted. Yeah, those aren't our names, Mianael agreed. Say what? Linnea's hands shot out, clamping down on the tops of the two boys' heads and turning them toward her. Her voice was low and threatening. She sounded exactly like the school bully who corners you and asks you to spot him the money for a train ticket. Trying to tell me you've forgotten me? Guess it has been a while, guess it makes sense, Mew. You boys don't have very good memories, do ya? I suddenly understood the relationship between them. Linnea and Persina must have been the leaders of their little band, and these two were their underlings. Pretty ironic that she still acted awfully arrogant after she'd become a slave. No, perish the thought. Rayford quickly shook his head. We just heard rumors that you'd gone back to the Great Forest, so we were sure you had to be someone else, right? Mianael eagerly agreed. You look absolutely gorgeous when Miss Persina isn't around, so we didn't recognize you for a second there. So, have mercy, please. All right. I think it's about time I put a stop to this. The other first years were watching from afar, full of fear. If their first impression was that the university was a terrifying place ruled by violence, it would reflect poorly on the school. This place was the first institution of education Roxy had ever attended, which made it sentimental to me. Admittedly, this school was pretty much the only higher place of learning in this world, but it didn't make it any less special. Just as I was resolving to step in and help these cute little first-year boys from the big bad delinquent. Hey, someone's coming, but why, isn't she, again? The crowd around us began chattering noisily. Someone made their way through the cluster of people and over to me. Norn, the student council president, kept her brows drawn solemnly as she approached, her light blonde hair, inherited from our mother, bouncing with every step. The tall demon girl and the muscular beast man I recognized from earlier on the stage were close behind. Seeing them reminded me of Ariel. So proud of you, Norn. Yes, she'd flubbed it a moment ago, but this time she only had to deal with Linnea. Just give her a few stern words, and then everyone will see what a majestic a president you really are. Don't worry, I won't let Linnea talk back. Your big brother will stand right behind you and shut her down. Big brother. To my surprise, Norn slipped right past Linnea and came to a stop before me, both hands on her hips. She was fuming as she glared straight up at me. What are you doing here at the entrance ceremony? Wait, so Linnea was getting a free pass for her behavior? Not that I was going to let her get away with bullying those poor boys, so it didn't really matter, but still. You know. This and that. I was so shocked I tripped on the stairs, you know. Ugh, seriously, how embarrassing, yeah. Well, your speech was great. You killed it up there. Father must be watching from heaven and, that's not what I want to hear right now. I was trying to praise her and just pissed her off more. How depressing. What are you doing here, bullying these new students, sorry? I stared at her. Bullying? Me? Surely you're joking. I glanced around at the crowd. All gazes were focused on Norn and me. The way people looked at her made it clear they looked to her for protection, whereas they regarded me with fear. How strange. They were acting like I was some kind of villain. Tell me, she demanded, what did these poor first years do to you anyway? Nothing. Although, they did badmouth you a bit, something about her being an inferior B rank or something, right? Yeah. I think? I am perfectly used to hearing those kinds of things already, so knock it off. You have them all terrified. I blinked at her. Well, they're terrified because of Linnea, and you're the one who set her on them, aren't you? Skice. So that's what this is about? That's how everyone else sees this? That I'm the evil school underboss and Linnea is my right-hand thug? Well, crap. I guess I have my past actions to thank for this. In fact, I already heard, Big Brother. Heard what? From who? Your big brother is already on the verge of tears over here. Are you really going to kick a man while he's down? Miss Roxy told me a few moments ago. She said you're keeping Mistress Linnea as a slave. What in the world are you thinking, that? Okay, sure. She might be a slave, but I'm not treating her like one. In exchange for shouldering her debt, I'm having her repay what she owes by working around the house. There's nothing skeevy about it, I said flatly. Norn frowned and pursed her lips in a pout. That's right. I saved Linnea. I ain't got nothing to feel bad about, you hear me? Nornie, Linnea interjected. Everything the boss is saying is true, Mew. He basically saved my butt, Mew. She rubbed her hands together and slid up to us, as if trying to ingratiate herself. The two boys, meanwhile, visibly relaxed. Norn glanced at Linnea and sighed. Oh really? Well, I suppose you don't look like you're in a sorry state, so it must be true. Good, she believed us. But since you have already graduated, Mistress Linnea, I would appreciate it if you would please stop causing troubles at the school. I wasn't causing any problems, Mew. I was just saying hi to a few familiar faces I recognized from a long time ago. Norn glared up at her, looking about as intimidating as a kicked puppy. Adorable. Okay, I get it, I'm in the wrong, Mew. So many people were looking, so I got a little carried away, is all, Mew. Norn's lips drew taut as she continued staring up at Linnea, who for her part scratched her head awkwardly. Apparently Linnea didn't count this as an actual fight. Maybe she might have just stopped herself shortly after anyway and declared, just pulling your tail, Mew. You boys, make sure you don't slack off, Mew. And maybe that would have been the end of it. Though the boys truly had been terrified of her. Norn turned her gaze from Linnea to me. As for you, Big Brother, while it flatters me that you're trying to protect me, I would like to request you not take it too far. I can take care of myself, I'll have you know. Yes'm, as you say. I bowed, prompting the crowd to ooh and ah. She actually made the Rudius Greyrat lower his head. Our student council president is really made of tough stuff. Nornie is so cute. Was it really that rare for me to show deference to others? I felt like I apologized and prostrated myself on the daily. Well, whatever. If something so trivial was enough to bolster Norn's reputation, nothing would make me happier. As silence fell again, I glanced back at the 3 first years, who were all paralyzed with their eyes fixed on us. Norn turned toward them. So who are these boys? Scholarship students, apparently, yes. I heard there would be 3 this year. Norn paused to clear her throat. She pinched the edge of her skirt and curtsied politely. A pleasure to make your acquaintances. I am the current student council president, Norn Greyrat. The only one of their number with enough wits to form a response was the shortest, who said, I'm Granulzofen Azura, the second son of Azura's first prince Grabbelzofen Azura. We are pleased to have you here, Lord Granul. It must be difficult for you, coming to a foreign country with which you are so unfamiliar. While I am sure many will have much to say about your upbringing and familial history, it is nothing you need worry about. If anything troubles you at any point, please do not hesitate to come to the student council. Once any person becomes a student, we are dedicated to acting as their ally. It matters not where you came from, we are here to support you so that you may dedicate yourself to your studies in peace. Those words, formal and stiff as they were, came right out of her mouth, without a single fumble. I suspected she must have practiced this spiel, given how gracefully she spoke. She gave another elegant curtsy. Yes, of course. Well then, I bid you an enjoyable time at the school. Norn wrapped up their conversation and walked off. Young Granel stared after her, completely dumbstruck. He wasn't the only one, I was frozen solid too. In the short time since I had last seen her, Norn had become even more impressive. I could only guess she was taking etiquette classes. That said, if she could already handle herself with that much grace, there was no way she'd be undermined by a couple of first-year upstarts. In fact, Rayford had been trembling in place, his eyes glued on me for several minutes now. Not wanting to get any further entangled in their affairs, I grabbed Linnea and decided to leave the scene. She could leave Roxy's lunch box in the staff room on her desk or something. 3 new scholarship students enrolled in the university at the same time. Norn took the student council president seat. The next generation was taking the reins at the school, and with that, brand new changes were sure to follow. Contemplating this, I parted ways with Linnea and made my way back to Cliff's research room. End of the 3rd chapter. If you like my content, become a member of the channel. You can leave a donation by clicking the super thanks button. Thank you very much for your support. Chapter 4. Research progress. Lately, I'd gotten used to seeing Cliff with his eye patch. Elinalise had made it for him, stitching in his initials, and it truly did look dapper on him. Alright, maybe dapper wasn't the right word. There was something imposing about it. He might lack the height and musculature to be like Ghislaine, but their vibes were similar enough to me. Now that Ariel has left, we have the first prince's son. I can already sense trouble on the horizon, Cliff muttered. Apparently he'd met the 3 newcomers during homeroom. As he pondered what the future held, he sighed. Unlike Ariel, I think he's more or less a hostage, so try to be nice to him, please. He's so young. He doesn't deserve to be caught up in his father's battles, I said. Yeah, I guess. Well, I'll warn them against trying anything with your little sister, at least. Thank you. We slipped into his research room as we chatted. Elinalise was nowhere to be seen. She was off looking after their child. She'd birthed countless kids over the course of the centuries she'd lived. Her child with Cliff was particularly special to her, however, so she was handling Clive with the utmost care. She was a veteran at raising children at this point, so I was sure he'd grow into an upstanding man. Cliff retrieved 3 wooden boxes from his room and stepped back into the hallway with me. Alright, shall we get going? Said boxes were 30 centimeters long on each side, a perfect cube. I took 2 from him. They were awfully heavy. Sorry to make you carry those, he said. No, not at all. We left the research building, setting off from the campus completely. How is young Clive doing? I asked. He's doing great. He cries at night though, and he does demand a lot of my attention. Reminds me of my own childhood. I nodded to myself. That's right. You were raised in an orphanage, weren't you? Yeah. A lot of the kids there were abandoned by their parents. But there's something special about looking after your own kid, agreed. Our destination was on the outskirts of the city, so we hopped into a carriage in front of the school and rode it to the city gates. We sat side by side and continued chatting during the ride. You sure are impressive, Master Cliff. You've become a proper father. I'm not a proper anything. It only looks like I'm doing a good job, because Lise is there handling everything. Yeah, but compared to you, I don't even pitch in with child-rearing once a month. Raising a child comes in many forms. In your case, you have wives and maids to help out, and you are doing what's required of you. There's no reason for you to feel bad for not being more involved. As Cliff sat there with a box on his lap, he spoke as if he could already guess what was bugging me. From my perspective, you're the one who's got it the roughest since you don't get to be there every day and watch them as they grow. Hearing those words from Reverend Father Cliff himself comes as a great relief. Indeed, should you ever feel the need to confess your sins, you need only come to me. Kidding, of course. At some point, Cliff had passed the exam to be recognized as a priest of Millis. Apparently it wasn't an official thing, but it did afford him a certain status while working at the church. It wasn't as if research preoccupied every minute of his time. I had to wonder if he was considering what would happen after he eventually returned to his homeland. Since I was a 6th year, that meant he was a 7th year. That was as long as anyone could stay at the school, so he would graduate next year. Master Cliff, what do you plan to do once you graduate? After a long pause, he answered, I don't know. My grandfather back home hasn't sent any word, but I would like to return home at least once. I want to tell him that I got married and that I have a child now. It'll be lonely without you. According to my predictions, Cliff's return to Millis would mark another showdown with the man god. Of course, that was only conjecture on my part. That's a ways off, Cliff assured me. Yeah, true. As we continued with our harmless small talk, the carriage pulled up to Sharia's southern gate. I passed some coins to the driver, and we began to make the rest of the journey on foot. We headed southeast once we passed through the gate, and after a little while, the company office came into view. It was a surprisingly large building that jutted out conspicuously on the outskirts of the city. There was a fence surrounding it, intended to ward people away. You know, I kind of realized it at the time too, but you really were lying back then, said Cliff. Yes, well, it didn't seem anything I said would convince you to believe me about his curse. It's not that I'm blaming you. That curse of his is strong, even now. I mean, look at me. My legs are trembling. As we spoke, we came to the front of the building. The writing on the front door said, "Employees prohibited beyond this point." I slipped a key from my pocket and unlocked the door. Inside was an unused reception area that I'd had constructed just in case, which we passed through before heading deeper in. The second I pushed open the door, Cliff shrank back. His eyes were fixed on Orsted, who was sitting at a desk made of high-quality lumber as he penned something. As per usual, the expression on his face was terrifying. "So it's you, Cliff Grimer." "Why yes, that's right. It's me. It must be difficult for you each time. What are you implying?" Orsted wasn't implying anything more than the literal meaning of the words he spoke, that Cliff probably had it rough meeting face-to-face with Orsted like this, purely by my request. "Sir Orsted, let's take care of this quickly. We brought you 3 today." "Very well." Cliff and I deposited the 3 boxes on the desk. Orsted reached for one and opened it, pulling out the full-face helmet contained inside. The others had similar helmets contained within, though the coloring on them was different. They were separated into black, brown, and gray. "Please try it on." Orsted did as suggested silently, forcing his head inside the helmet. He looked suspicious, wearing only a helmet with no suit of armor on. I personally found him even more terrifying than usual this way. "Well, Master Cliff? How is it?" "No good. Worse, in fact." "Alright, let's try the next one." Orsted tried on each of the 3 helmets in order. Each time, we clocked Cliff's reaction, trying to ascertain whether they had any effect at all. Once we were finished with them all, Cliff shared his opinion. "The third one is the best. I tried using the flak method on the first one to transform his mana, but that completely backfired. That means it's highly possible that your mana itself carries the curse." "His very mana is cursed?" I asked in disbelief. "Yes," Cliff said. "The moment Orsted's, that is, Sir Orsted's, mana enters someone's line of sight, the curse activates." "That's how it seems to me. Then maybe we could find something to cover his body with that would prevent any of his mana from escaping?" "Certainly, if you trap him in a box with no openings whatsoever, then his curse probably won't activate, but that doesn't really solve anything." Fair point. The 2 of us were researching Orsted's curse. This past year, we had conducted experiments using the research he'd already done on Elinali's curse as a base. That was how we managed to identify his head as the main source of his curse. Thus, Cliff developed helmet-shaped magical implements. Orsted would try them on and Cliff would offer up his responses, which was how we tested the efficacy of the implements. Our experiments had borne some fruit. By having Orsted equip the latest version of Cliff's helmet, we managed to soften the curse's effects, albeit only marginally. If he wore that thing around town, he'd still make children cry and stray dogs cower in fear and run, and horses would likely scramble away from him, thereby overturning the carts they were pulling. However, it was enough to at least soften Sylphie and Eris's attitude toward him. Before, they'd hated him as fiercely as if he'd personally killed their parents, but that was now reduced to the level of disgust one felt toward a loathsome boss, perhaps. Not ideal, but enough for them to realize that he really was plagued by a curse, and that the reason I was working for him was because it didn't affect me at all. It was during the course of his research that Cliff finally realized the nature of Orsted's curse and why I had lied to him and Zenoba previously. That marked an important step forward. His feelings toward Orsted were still complicated, but at least he was making do at this point. we still had a long way to go. At present, the helmet was roughly twice the size of Orsted's actual head. There was no ventilation, so putting it on meant you had to hold your breath, and you couldn't see anything, hear anything, or speak at all. Obviously, Orsted could not wear it for an extended period. Yes, the road ahead was long indeed. On the other hand, Cliff was pretty much a genius for managing to develop this within the mere span of a year. At the rate his research was progressing, Orsted would someday soon be able to walk around the city waving at passers-by. Cliff was pleased about the arrangement, too. Researching another person's curse provided him with additional data that he could use to construct a magical implement to free Elinalize from hers. It was only unfortunate that he would eventually return to that research once things calmed down and Elinalize wasn't so busy looking after their child all the time. I didn't see the problem with her leaving her Curseby for the moment, though. They could go straight to making their second child that way. All right. We'll come back in a month, said Cliff. Very well. You really are going out of your way for me, Cliff Grimer. I never imagined you held such talent, right? Yeah. I am a genius, after all, aren't I? Orsted was shocked by what Cliff's research had accomplished. In the many long time loops he'd lived through, he'd sometimes tried doing something about his curse, but after several years of testing to no avail, he'd more or less given up. Perhaps, in these 200 years he'd lived on continuous repeat, there had been others, besides Cliff researching curses, who'd made some progress, but they wouldn't align themselves with Orsted. The important thing was that we'd produced results. The next time Orsted went through another loop, he could now find a way to convince Cliff to research his curse for him. While we're on the subject, I wonder if I'd even be in said loop. He mentioned I wasn't in the previous ones he'd lived through. Rudius, as I was lost in thought, Orsted called to me. Cliff had left the office by that point. He was all too eager to distance himself from Orsted as quickly as possible, likely thanks to the curse's effects. No matter how much he reasoned that it was a curse producing such emotions in him, his body was convinced Orsted was an enemy. It's like how humans know cockroaches don't hold the power to actually kill them, but they still act terrified when they spot one. I appreciate this. Being thanked like that made me grin from ear to ear. Ah, Mr. CEO, you really know how to flatter a person. We should definitely go window shopping together once his anti-curse helmet was complete. A city date with Orsted. Instead of a wolf in sheep's clothing, I'd get to see what it was like to be a weak and feeble sheep borrowing the wolf's skin to intimidate everyone else. No need to thank me. It's emotionally draining to keep this up with my entire family opposing it. Also, if you're able to go around as you please, it'll get under the man-god skin more. I'm only doing this for my own benefit. As you say, when our CEO's illness was cured at last, Orsted Corporation would rise to become a world-class business. With that thought in mind, I took my leave from the office. After parting ways with Orsted, I looped around the back of the house and slipped into the armory. I pulled out my miniature magic armor, a completely black suit in 3 parts, arms, legs, and torso. The pieces looked lightweight, but since I'd shaped them with earth magic, they were incredibly heavy. I slipped it on and injected my own mana into it, making it much easier to move around in. Sorry for the wait, Master Cliff, I said. It's fine. Shall we be off? The two of us headed back to the university. Zenoba was next on my list of people to visit. It was a bit of a pain to commute back and forth to the office, but we had little other choice since it would cause a huge fuss if Orsted were to actually enter the university. What will you be doing for lunch? I asked Cliff. Good question. Think I'll head back to my research room, drop this stuff off, then head to the cafeteria. I'll let you go fetch Zenoba, then we can all eat together. Sounds good. Cliff left to return the helmets, while I made my way to Zenoba's research room as instructed. I paused as I was reaching for his doorknob. In the past, I had paid for recklessly opening the door by being forced to bear witness to Zenoba's perversions. That had been an awkward situation for both of us. As a man who learned from his past mistakes, I made it a point to knock this time before entering. Knock, knock, anyone there? I called out. Master. What miraculous timing. Please, come in. Zenoba responded instantly. With his permission, I swung the door open. What I found was a geeky-looking 30-year-old man and a naked 10-year-old girl. Said girl's face contorted in pain as she cradled her stomach, blood trickling between her legs. Oh my. This is a crime scene. Zenoba. How could you? You put your hands on Julie? This is no time for jokes, Master. Please, use your healing magic on Julie. The bleeding won't stop. Zenoba begged desperately. Was there some kind of accident or something? Julie glanced at me, eyes bleary and tear-filled. Grand Master, my stomach hurts so badly. Please help me. I was no doctor, but I inspected her, driven by their pleas. There were no outward signs of injury, which could only mean it was internal. The blood was coming from her crotch, and the smell was almost nauseating. I'd be willing to bet, no, there's no mistake about it. It's likely her period, right? Your best bet would be to call Miss Ginger, I said. Pardon? Now I understand. Yes, come to think of it, Julie is a lady. My mind must be failing, that I did not even imagine that possibility. Zenoba chuckled to himself. Julie glanced at him worriedly. Master? Julie was already 9 years old. Or was she 10 now? Either way, it seemed awfully soon for her to be having her period, but perhaps this was the norm for dwarfs? Then again, perhaps the traders had been mistaken about her actual age when we bought her? Not that it mattered. But before we worry about that, we should eat lunch, Zenoba said. Julie, you may rest for today. Will you be all right by yourself, lying here until Ginger returns? After a long pause, she muttered, I'm scared. Master, I want you to stay with me. What's this I hear, Zanzan? Sure are popular, ain't ya? Cheeky little rascal. I shrugged. Well, that works too. I can go buy some stuff for us. We can eat here. So Julie's already a woman. I planned to wait until she reached adulthood to put our plans into action, but I'd noticed recently that her total mana pool had stopped growing. It was probably about time for us to get started. After leaving, I briefly rendezvoused with Cliff, bought some food, and then returned. I was back in Zenoba's research room within an hour or so. The three of us were currently munching away on our food, huddling together. Ginger was close by, seeing to Julie. At this point, she was more of a maid than a knight. We considered moving rooms to give Julie some space, but she insisted we remain close by because she was anxious. We finally settled upon staying to keep her calm. Master, how is the magic armor doing? Zenoba asked. Not bad. I was able to stop a monster's attack with it. Although I still feel like its performance is a little unreliable. It may be fine against beasts, but it'd be rough going up against a swordsman in that thing. Indeed, you are sacrificing defense, mobility, and your own self-regeneration power in the process. I nodded, but to achieve the same level of capability as the prototype, we'd need to make it bigger. We'd made several different versions of my magic armor in the past 6 months. At first, we thought to merely replicate all the functions of the original in compact form. That didn't turn out too well, but it wasn't entirely surprising. The first one employed the most cutting-edge technology at our disposal, which included a number of mysterious techniques that the man-god had shared with us. Trying to duplicate the original meant we weren't able to reduce the suit's size by much. Sure, we managed to make something very slightly smaller than the first, but at the cost of functionality, which kinda defeated the point. From there, we continued with the trial and error, which resulted in annulling the magic circle we'd drawn on the torso. We kept the magic circles concentrated to the arm and leg pieces instead, fashioning them so that they extended to the shoulder for the arm pieces and to the groin for the leg pieces. With that, we successfully managed to cut down the size and the cost of mana for equipping it. With that, we succeeded in creating version 2, which consisted only of the arm and leg pieces, but forced us to put a power limit on them. Since the chest piece would not have mana channeled through it, the leg and arm pieces would be torn off if I went full throttle with my magical power. It wasn't like they weren't being held down by anything. It was a shame the suit had such high functionality but could only wield power equivalent to that of an advanced swordsman. That was why I decided to add a new torso piece with supplementary magic circles that would prevent the arms and legs from being torn off. This led to the current incarnation of the armor, improved version 2. Its power rivaled that of a Saint-tier swordsman. Ideally, I'd want something more powerful than that, but we were still far from that. Ideals were always beyond one's fingertips. The world never worked the way one wanted it to. Well, guess there's no real choice but to keep using this and improve it as we go, I said. Agreed, Cliff said with a nod. Eventually, I wanted to craft a suit that he could wear as well. That said, Master, what about the Gatling gun? How was it? That thing is a smidge too lethal, so I think usability will be a bit limited. I put a lot of thought into my weaponry, too. I had one of Roxy's acquaintances craft a Gatling gun for me. In accordance with Orsted's advice, I had the design simplified, altering the device so it could discharge roughly 10 stone cannons nearly simultaneously. Almost like the five-finger flare spell from Dragon Quest, except not quite as badass and more like a shotgun. The Gatling gun was one of my countermeasures against the Water God style. According to Orsted, the Water God style was based around brushing off the opponent's magic. Since my shotgun fired each round almost instantaneously, with minimal lag between each one, it was highly effective. This strategy wouldn't work against opponent in the King tier or above, but it was quite a useful little weapon otherwise, save its length and lack of maneuverability. I'd tried all kinds of things, but nothing had given me the solid leap in power I wanted. I continued dedicating myself to physical training and practicing magic, but since I had a job, I wasn't often at home. That made it difficult to find extra time for more training. I could only rack my brain for better ideas. I had only faced small fries lately, but there was no telling when the next powerful opponent might appear. I didn't care if whatever attack I came up with was a one-hit wonder that would be useless afterward, but I needed something that could take a person down in one shot. Come to think of it, Zenoba, how's it going with the automata? I asked. That research has been on pause. Part of it is because I have hit a plateau, but I have also been prioritizing the research that will ensure your survival, Master. Well, sorry about that. I am enjoying the process of creating this magic armor as well. There is nothing for you to apologize for. If anything, I should be the one thanking you, he said, rapping lightly on my armor with his fist. What a stand-up guy. Oh yeah, Zenoba, since Julie is a woman now, I think it's about time we kick off our plan to sell those picture books and figurines. Think you're up for it? The picture books and figures were a key part of my plan to improve the Super tribe's reputation. The first was already pretty much complete. Unbeknownst to me, Zenoba had already bought the dies and produced a completely painted figure. I had a few nitpicks, such as the hair being not quite saturated enough, the cream color on the spear being a bit too strong, and the skin color being too bright, but those were inconsequential. I'd left the prototype on some shelf at the head of my bed, which resulted in Roxy screaming bloody murder when she woke up and discovered it one morning. As soon as Norn heard the news, she stole it and took it to her own room. This made it pretty obvious that people would recognize the figure as a Superd. The picture book came out nicely as well. Norn penned the text, while Zenoba was in charge of the art. Neither were particularly talented, but their work was unique, with the sort of soft touch that children were often fond of. We also included a chart for learning how to read letters at the back of the book so it could double as a textbook. I figured people were less likely to throw it away if it served such a practical purpose. Now all we had to do was make block prints so we could mass-produce it, then add color by hand. Our work lacked the professionalism and standardization of a printing press, but it wasn't so bad since most books in this world were made by hand anyway. I had already made it a habit to bring along a book and figurine with me when I set out on one of my jobs to save people, never missing an opportunity to proselytize. Which was all fine and good, but we needed to take a more concerted approach. That will be a bit difficult, Zenoba said, frowning. The cost? I guessed. No. We have plenty of funding as it is, and Princess Ariel is providing additional financial backing. I have received word that she's already set up our workshop in the Azura Kingdom as well, so there's no problem on the production front either. The issue lies in the sales themselves. We have no connections with any merchants. That part, come to think of it, I'd never considered who we'd get to actually sell them. I had contemplated opening my own shop so I could do it myself, but given my current circumstances, that wasn't going to happen. We needed a salesperson, someone to peddle our merch for us. I couldn't think of anyone in my circle of acquaintances with the necessary business acumen. I wonder if we'd be better off seeing if Ariel could introduce us to someone, I muttered. Her Highness does appear to be quite busy lately. Her coronation isn't far off. I don't think it would be wise to trouble her when she has so much on her plate, said Zenoba. True, and putting ourselves further in her debt won't do us any favors either. Better to put the plan on hold for now, then. Oh well, it wasn't like we were in a hurry. We could wait until Julie was legally an adult. So basically, another 5 years, that's right. Zenoba, do you think it would be possible to teach Julie the fundamentals of business for the next 5 years? Possibly, yes. But I feel she would best serve us as a craftsman. If we want someone to serve as a merchant for us, we should consider buying a different slave for that. A different slave, it would be best if we could find someone who already had an interest in business, who could read, write, and do math, and who was also pretty well known. It would be great if they were popular with the people and skilled at marketing. Wait, there's a slave just like that. Nope. No, actually, I don't know anyone who would fit the bill. There was no way I could leave my business to a derpy cat who got herself scammed and turned into a slave. I'd be better off buying someone new for the job entirely. I think we should iron out all the details of our plan before we set anything into motion, I said at last. Agreed, indeed. I needed to plan this out carefully. Being too hasty would only lead to failure. I had taken my own sweet time up till this point, so there was no problem with taking another decade to get everything together. Alright, we'll leave that topic for another time then. Shall we work on improving the magic armor instead? Yes, Master. In fact, I already have a vision in mind for the next version of your armor. After we finished our food, we continued our research meeting for a bit before parting ways. My magic armor's performance was slowly but surely improving. The sun was beginning to set when I dropped by the staff room to pay my respects to Vice Principal Genius. I found Roxy working there and hovered around behind her, only for her to lose her temper with me and drive me out into the hallway. I was dejectedly hunched out there when Norn strolled by, having come to return the key to the student council room. We decided to walk home together, the three of us, for the first time in a long while. Norn, was there anything in today's lesson you didn't understand? Roxy asked. No, I didn't have a problem, Miss Roxy. Your lessons are as easy to comprehend as ever. Roxy and Norn chatted pleasantly beside me. The two had become awfully close without me even realizing it. Gone was the awkwardness that used to hang between them. I'm trying to be careful so it's all easy to digest, but please tell me if there's anything that doesn't make sense, said Roxy. If that happens, I hope you'll take the time to teach me personally. I charge a lot for private tutoring, you know. Their lively conversation warmed my heart the whole way home. We're back. I called out when I spotted Lilia and Zenith in the garden, watching the sunset together. Welcome back, everyone, Lilia said. Zenith was silent. At this point, she hadn't changed much. For better or worse, her condition seemed to be stable. I wondered if her memories were really gone forever. I hadn't discovered anything that could help her, and I was so busy with other things that I couldn't really look into the matter in earnest. Recently, Lilia and Sylphie had been trying some methods of their own, but to no avail. We're back, I announced again, once we were inside the house. Sylphie came shuffling out from deeper within and said, Welcome home, Rudy, Roxy, and Norn. My beautiful wife was wearing an apron, and Lucy was tottering along behind her. When she spotted Norn, she scrambled over to tackle her. Nornie! Welcome home. Lucy! I'm glad to be home. Accustomed to this greeting, Norn swept the little girl into her arms and stroked her head. It was obvious how much Lucy liked my sister by the way she beamed up at her. But the moment her eyes met mine, she hid herself in Norn's shadow. You seriously don't have to act that displeased by me. Norn, did we plan for you to stay with us today? Sylphie asked. No, but I heard about Mistress Linia coming to stay here, so I decided to come take a look. That, Sylphie nodded thoughtfully. The circumstances were a bit complicated. Rudy basically saved her. She sighed to herself. What? What's with that sigh? Is he adding another one to his harem? Asked Norn. I'm not sure about that, said Sylphie. As wild as she seems, Linia does seem pretty fond of Rudy. And she is pretty erotic. They were talking as though I was going to put my hands on Linia. Admittedly, she was quite voluptuous and appealing. If you asked me if I wanted to take a midnight tumble and wrestle her in bed, I'd be lying if I said no. That, however, was an entirely different matter. I was a man of reason, after all, not entirely ruled by carnal desire. What did Miss Eris say about all of this? She wasn't against it? Norn tilted her head. She's claimed ownership over Linia and refuses to hand her over to Rudy. So that's it, come to think of it, where is Eris? I asked the question as soon as it occurred to me. Sylphie, where's Eris? Taking Leo for a walk. I keep telling her that she's pregnant so she should give it a rest, but she won't listen to me. Seems like every afternoon I look out and she's practicing with her sword again. I understand she's past the precarious stage of her pregnancy, but what is she going to do if she causes herself to miscarry? Eris was the same as ever. I only wished she'd keep the jumping and leaping to a minimum. She was certainly strong, but the baby inside her wasn't. It made me worry if she could actually safely carry it to term. Welcome home everyone, called a voice from above. I shifted my gaze and glimpsed Aisha at the top of the stairs. You guys have to see this. She excitedly turned around and beckoned at someone. A woman stepped up to the railing, wearing the same maid outfit as Aisha. She came down the stairs and stopped at the landing to spin in a circle. As her skirt danced through the air, it gave me a brief glimpse of her thick calves. The girl then posed like a gravure model and said, literally a catgirl maid. I made some adjustments to some of Mother's old clothes and created an outfit for Miss Linnea. What do you think? Cute, isn't it? It was definitely cute. Even the girls present breathed sighs of admiration. So Aisha made that by hand? She claimed it was a used outfit, but it looked brand new to me. I guess maybe the fabric itself is old. Why put off tomorrow what we can do today? I'm going to have her working her tail off. Aisha declared. Yes'm, ready for duty, Mew. Let's start with the cooking. Petite little Aisha led the way with the much taller Linnea marching behind her. The two were in high spirits as they filed past us and began preparations in the kitchen. It was kind of entertaining to see Aisha so pumped up. Mistress Linnea certainly does seem to be in high spirits, Norn commented. I figured she would be much more depressed about being reduced to a slave. That's because Linnea's an idiot. It's like swallowing something piping hot. It burns at first, but once it's down the hatch, you forget how it felt like magma on your tongue. After that, our whole family sat down together for a meal for the first time in a while. I even got to hop into the bath with Eris once we were finished and see just how big her belly had gotten. Before it grew too late, Sylphie and I tucked Lucy into bed. I gave magic lessons to Aisha and Norn as soon as they got out of the bath, then stopped by with Lilia briefly to talk about Zenith's future. I stared the whole time Roxy breastfed Lara before bed. And finally, I had a little bit of sexy time with Sylphie before nodding off myself. It was a satisfying day. Starting tomorrow, I would spend every day training for a while. Gotta work hard. End of the 4th chapter. If you like my content, become a member of the channel. You can leave a donation by clicking the Super Thanks button. Thank you very much for your support. Chapter 5. Signs of a Family Falling Apart. 10 days passed. I spent that time living out of our company office while training from sunrise to sunset. When Orsted was around, I worked on building my stamina in the mornings, did mock battles in the afternoon, and took lessons inside the building in the evening. I made sure to clean my room before bed and organized documents. The cycle would continue over and over in this way. On days when Orsted wasn't around, I spent all day training. I would equip my magic armor and work on the different forms Orsted had taught me until I was too exhausted to continue. Then I would contemplate different patterns of coordinated attack. Sylphie would occasionally bring me a lunchbox, and while she was around, I'd team up with her to see how my coordinated attacks played out in reality. She wasn't here today, though. The forms Orsted taught me were ones the dragon god Eurupen had developed and left behind 400 years ago. He was known more colloquially as one of the 3 Godslayers, which also made him one of Perugius's comrades. Among all the dragon gods in history, Eurupen had the smallest mana pool, at least according to Orsted. He was the weakest of all the candidates for the title of dragon god at the time, and no one thought he would manage to earn it. But it was Eurupen who developed a whole new and unique dragon god style. With that, he was able to not only claim the title for himself, but also play an integral part in Laplace's defeat. Eurupen was still revered in modern times as the most prominent genius in history. Eurupen's dragon god style involved using as little mana and power as possible to corner an opponent. Orsted managed to locate the Book of Secrets he left behind and successfully used it to teach himself Eurupen's fighting style and the quintessential technique, Holy Dragon Aura. The part about not using mana wasn't very useful for me, but the idea of pinning down an opponent with minimal effort was something I could get behind. Plus, his style of weaving martial arts with magic in close combat suited me and my magic armor well. Today's plan included mentally simulating coordinated attacks again. First up was my stone cannon. With a direct hit, it was capable of even injuring Orsted. Its potency was staggering, on the same level as the Sword of Light. That made it the natural linchpin of my coordinated attacks. Next was Quagmire. I had used it so many times that it was the one spell in my repertoire I could conjure the fastest. It was best to place it at an opponent's feet when they were charging forward at top speed, where it served as a good launching point for going on the offensive. Electric took a bit more time to conjure than Quagmire did, but it was highly effective since it could pierce through a person's battle aura and paralyze them. There were many times when Electric would work against opponents unaffected by Quagmire. It was best to couple them, use Electric first then follow it up with Quagmire. Once I had my enemy rooted in place, I could use Deep Mist or Frost Nova to throw them off balance. Stone Cannon was generally more than enough for pure offense. The rest of my spells were for stopping my opponent in their tracks or trying to limit their movement. No matter what it took, I had to make them drop their defenses so they couldn't dodge my attacks or brush them off. Then I would finish them off with Stone Cannon. If I could pull things off in that order, I was practically guaranteed victory against any opponent, or so Orsted assured me. Most important was making the sequence of attacks second nature. If I could do that, then it didn't matter if my opponent pulled moves I'd never seen before. I would still be able to respond without delay. To recap, this was main outline. Quagmire enemy makes a move, I use magic to respond, they make another move, I respond to that with my magic again, pin them down, and hit them with a stone cannon. Yep, talking about it was easy enough. The main issue was some swordsmen could cut right through mana and magic alike, and there was no guarantee I'd get the drop on them every time. It was highly likely any supplementary magic I tried would be ineffective. That made it tough. Incidentally, Orsted had taught me some spells above King tier for multiple different elemental schools. I hadn't accomplished much with that knowledge, though. Most offensive spells above King tier apparently consisted of arranging a combination of spells from Saint tier or below. Let's use the Emperor tier water spell Absolute Zero as an example. All you had to do was increase the speed and potency of Frost, which itself was a combination of Water Cascade and Icicle Field. Absolute Zero let you skip drenching the opponent with Water Splash, instead allowing you to freeze a wide area in an instant. I could already use Absolute Zero. It was no big deal, I'd already acquired spells up to Emperor tier. That was why when Batagati said I could call myself an Imperial Earth Mage when he saw my Stone Cannon. Ordinarily, there was no way to increase the potency of Stone Cannon, but in theory, it could be strengthened using the same process of combining spells like with Absolute Zero. Since I had already learned up to Saint tier magical spells in each of the 4 offensive schools, one could say I had already mastered all there was to master. As for God tier spells, I probably wouldn't be able to use them anyway. Apparently, you needed an enormous amount of mana and extremely fine control over said mana, in addition to using an insanely long incantation and a magic circle to help control the spell. As Orsted told it, the potency of these spells was such that they could change the landscape. Some of the strange geographical features in this world were actually the results of such magic. Frankly, I was still pretty crappy when it came to drawing magic circles, and I didn't see a point in using magic on such a grand scale. Solid foundations, practical experience, and combined magic, those were the 3 things I needed. Best to start from the ground up, as with all things. Rudius, Orsted returned while I was immersed in my magic training. I immediately whipped around to bow to him. Welcome back, sir. Indeed, it was an employee's duty to properly bow in greeting when the CEO showed up at the office. Having only one employee probably felt a little desolate to him, but we had to hang tight until Cliff concluded his research. When we eventually hired in more employees, I wanted to make them all bow their heads in unison to the CEO. So what if they called our company shady as a result? We have work, said Orsted. When I first started bowing to him and acting all polite, he commanded me to act normal, but he'd grown used to my antics by this point. You'll leave in 3 days. I'll explain the details to you now, Orsted said. It would be my pleasure to carry out a mission for you, sir. I received my work commissions directly from Orsted himself. It seemed he'd already determined my next assignment. As usual, it's not a particularly challenging job, but you should say your goodbyes to your family before you depart. Yes, sir. And so, I returned home for a little while. Welcome back home, Mew. Boss? No, not boss, master. The moment I returned home, I found our catgirl maid sitting by the main entrance, legs neatly tucked beneath her. What has this little minx done now? Did she mess something up? Yes, it's nice to be back, Linnea. But what in the world are you doing here? Well, I made a teeny tiny screw up, so I'm out here, reflecting on my mistakes. Her ears sagged, looking as depressed as she now sounded. So that's it. If she was busy thinking about what she'd done, it was best to leave her be. I strolled past her and made my way into the house. I'm home, I declared. Lucy peeked from the shadow of the door leading into the living room. She's going to make a run for it again, isn't she? Much to my surprise, she instead darted out from the shadows and flew toward me, her little footsteps echoing as she latched onto my leg. Daddy. Welcome home. What's going on? Why does she seem so happy to have me back here today? That's right, I'm home, Lucy. I reached down to lift her into my arms, but she darted behind me, clutching tightly to my robe. For whatever reason, she was being awfully affectionate today. Daddy couldn't be happier. Mommy. Daddy's home, she bellowed. Yes, I heard you. Sylphie called back, her voice echoing from the bathroom. Hold on a second, Sylphie must be in the middle of washing the clothes or cleaning the bath. Either way, Lucy called for her mother again and again. She eventually grew tired of waiting and relinquished her hold on my robe, scampering off toward the bathroom. What was that all about? Well, whatever her motivations, there was no use overthinking it. Children would be children. I was always the one chasing her for attention, so maybe she decided to be considerate and indulge me for once. I wandered aimlessly around the house. Lara and Leo were together in the living room, the former sleeping soundly. She seemed to be in good health today. From there, I moved to the kitchen, where I found Lilia prepping for our next meal. Her face looked quite heavy with exhaustion. What could be tiring her out so much? Miss Lilia, I'm back, I said. Welcome home, my lord. Are you feeling fatigued? No, her face looked a bit paler than normal, despite her denial. I think maybe you should rest. Lilia shook her head. It's nothing to worry about. Are you sure? Yes. If she insisted, then I wasn't going to push her on it, but it still made me worry that I might be pushing her too much. If you're feeling physically unwell, please don't hesitate to take a break, I told her. I appreciate your concern, but I truly am fine. I was going to take her word for it, but if it wasn't physical exhaustion, perhaps it was something mental. In other words, anxiety. Did something happen? I asked instead, changing tack. After a short pause, she answered, a short time ago, Lady Eris left to go to the school. Eris did? Why? She claimed she's supposed to teach Lady Norn swordsmanship today. Swordsmanship, my pregnant wife really was a restless thing, wasn't she? Maybe Eris was aspiring to be an instructor. I wouldn't oppose that, of course, but I did wish she'd rein it in a bit while she was pregnant. She was making me worry. My apologies, said Lilia. We all tried to stop her from leaving, but before we knew it, she was gone. It's okay. Thank you for trying. Eris wasn't the type to do what she was told anyway. No wonder Lilia was exhausted. Perhaps I needed to have a stern word with her myself. Though, it was debatable if she'd heed anything I said either. Sylphie was equally unlikely to get through to her, but Aisha was better than anyone at presenting a persuasive argument, so maybe she could convince Eris. That reminds me, where is Aisha? I asked. Lilia forced a smile. She's in the rear garden. As Lilia said, Aisha was indeed in the rear garden. She sat in a corner, her shoulders noticeable trembling from behind. As strong as she seemed oddly vulnerable right now. Was she crying? Aisha, big brother, welcome home. Aisha glanced over her shoulder at me, her tone perfectly normal. I scrutinized her face, but could find no sign that she'd been sobbing at all. But she did immediately sigh. I noticed she had a shovel in her hand and was digging a hole in the corner of the garden. When I peered into said hole, I found a number of porcelain shards. I recognized the patterns on them. There was a cup handle in there too, which I also remembered from somewhere. I'd seen it on a fancy teacup Aisha had bought long ago with her own allowance. As far as I knew, she was incredibly fond of that cup. She would always use it whenever she had tea. Aisha had allowed me to use the cup just once in the past. She'd worn a happy grin on her face as she declared, "You're the only other person I'll let use this cup." She also said something like, "See? Doesn't drinking from a good cup make the tea that much better?" Honestly, I hadn't seen any difference. The only thing that stood out in my mind was how happy she'd looked and that the tea had been quite tasty. And now, her beloved cup had been shattered. "Hey, big brother," her voice was low and threatening, like I'd never heard it before. "What is it?" She was livid, fuming with quiet rage. Oh crap. Had I done something wrong? I had no qualms about apologizing if the situation called for it, but saying sorry when I didn't even know what I'd done wrong would be like pouring fuel on the flames of her ire. So what do I do? What could have caused this? While I puzzled over it, Aisha turned her gaze to me and said, "Can we get rid of that cat?" Sorry? That cat? What cat? Wait. She was probably referring to the feline seated at the front entrance with her legs neatly tucked under her. Aisha shook her head. "I guess it would be wrong to get rid of her. We could sell her to those slave traders, or rather to Miss Eris's family. Judging by the way they talked, her family would pay a high price for her, right? Maybe they won't give us 1,500 Azuran gold coins, but they'd give us at least half, right? Hold on a second. Calm down. Let's have ourselves a seat, okay?" I conjured a chair with my earth magic and motioned for her to sit. Aisha fished a broken shard out of the hole, which she threw at my feet before plopping down on the chair. "See that? It's not particularly expensive, mind you, but it's not something you can get your hands on anymore. The person who made it died, and the shop that sold it went under. Well, anything like that is going to break eventually, you know," I said, conjuring a chair for myself and taking a seat in front of her. I wanted to try to get her to calm down a bit first. "I know that. I'd hardly get that pissed off over a single broken cup." All right, for starters, it seemed Linnea had been the one to break the cup, which upset Aisha. She claimed she wasn't angry, but she was clearly fuming. "It's just, I don't think that cat is cut out to be a maid at our house. When she tries to wash dishes, she breaks them. When she tries to clean the house, she shatters mirrors. When she tries to wash the laundry, she gets the sheets covered in fur. Everyone fails when they first start out," I reminded her. "Linnea may look a little rough around the edges, but she actually comes from a pretty noble family and has been kinda spoiled." "Well, Aisha raised her voice and started to say something, only to swallow her words. Perhaps she meant to argue that she never made such mistakes when she started out. When she was cleaning the living room, she nearly splashed water all over poor little Lara, you know? She did what? How did that happen? She was cleaning someplace high up and carrying a bucket of water in one hand and a rag in the other. Then she somehow lost her balance and started to fall." Aisha paused and said, "Well, I guess that didn't end up being that big of a deal, though. Did that rotten cat not even know how to clean?" Thinking back, I had gone into her dorm room once before. It had been quite the pigsty as I remembered it. "Not that it was good that she did that," Aisha amended, "but I wouldn't protest her employment here over something so trivial. Miss Norn is even worse than that and a slow learner to boot." "Excuse you. No need to take potshots at Norn." "Potshots?" Aisha furrowed her brows. "Well, it's not like I'm trying to badmouth her or anything. My point is, that cat isn't that bad at learning things. Once she makes a mistake, she tends not to repeat it." But still, she breathed a sigh. "That furball won't apologize." "She wouldn't apologize?" Well, that certainly wasn't good. Whenever she makes any mistake, she doesn't act the least bit ashamed and just says, my bad, I'll be more careful next time, mew." For what it was worth, that probably was Linnea's way of apologizing. But an apology doesn't carry much value unless the person receiving it feels satisfied by it. If you only get further under the other person's skin, then your apology is meaningless. "That's not good," I said. "You think so too, right?" Personally, I'd probably forgive Linnea, but Aisha was her boss. She needed to have a crystal clear understanding about that. "So, come on, big brother. Let's fire her, please? I'm begging you. I can't take working with her anymore." It was rare for Aisha to speak so disparagingly of anyone. Her patience really must be at its breaking point. Even so, nothing that catastrophic had happened. The shattered cup was merely what pushed her over the edge after a number small, trivial offenses. On their own, they were simple to laugh off and forgive, but they'd piled up enough for Aisha to lose her patience. Yeah, but even so. I get what you mean. Linnea does have a habit of getting carried away, and she has her shortcomings as well. Still, this must be a hard situation for her. She's probably only acting cheerful because she's trying desperately to acquaint herself with her new surroundings. Maybe that's why it looks like she doesn't feel ashamed at all for her mistakes. But you did say she hasn't really repeated the same screw-ups, right? I figured Linnea must be doing her best. People had a habit of making the same mistakes, but it was possible to reduce the chances of that happening. That was the point of reflecting on one's actions. If Linnea hadn't repeated the same slip-ups, then it was obvious that she was trying to improve. When I saw her at the front porch, she seemed to be genuinely thinking about what she'd done. I got the impression she felt bad about it, too. Nonsense. That furball probably doesn't feel the tiniest bit of remorse. I mean, her attitude is all weird to begin with. She acts super subservient to Miss Roxy, Miss Eris, and Leo, but she's kind of cheeky when it comes to Miss Sylphie. Aisha's lips curled outward as she pouted, insistent that Linnea was in the wrong. She sure could be stubborn. You think she has an attitude with Sylphie? I mean, she's way more casual with her than with Miss Eris. And sometimes she calls her fits too. It was a while ago and didn't last all that long, but the two had been at odds when they attended the University of Magic. In a way, they probably were a lot less formal with each other. I shrugged. That's probably just because they've known each other a long time. I hope that's really all it is, but ever since Linnea's arrival, the whole house has been weird. Weird, now that she mentioned it, we'd never had this kind of problem when Roxy or Eris came to stay here. Anyway, I'll make sure she apologizes properly if she messes up again, I said. As for the things she's destroyed, we can add that to the debt she owes. I'll also lecture her about fixing her attitude and acting like a proper maid. After I do all that, would you be willing to give her a little bit longer and see how things play out? For me? Aisha grunted, lips still gathered in a pout. She snapped her eyes shut and turned her head away. Seeing her act this way, I suspected she really just wanted to vent her frustrations and that her anger had all but subsided. Hey, come on, Aisha. I know she's a mess, but she is my friend. After a very, very long pause, Aisha finally said, well, I guess I can forgive her this one time for your sake. She hopped to her feet and faced me. But, big brother, even ignoring how I feel about the matter, things aren't going to end well if they keep up like this. Then she went back into the house. I made sure to give Linnea a thorough talking to after that. She gave me a perfunctory, yes sir, mew, but seemed a little too casual about it for my liking. I hope she took my words to heart. Later, when Eris returned home with Roxy, I warned her against doing any intense exercise for a while. She folded her arms and frowned at me, huffing, I know that. I could tell this was an instance where she said she understood but really didn't. At least she wasn't charging outside and brandishing her sword everywhere. Once her tummy and thighs grew a bit bigger, she'd probably start taking it easy. That didn't stop me from worrying, though. I hoped the baby was hanging on in there. You have Eris as a mom and me as a dad, so I'm sure you can do it. Go, baby, go. Thanks to Aisha's sullen mood, dinner that evening was unusually gloomy. When we finished our meal, Sylphie whispered to me, Linnea hasn't gotten used to living here yet. She wore a guilty look as if she felt responsible. There was no reason for her to, but perhaps because I was leaving the house in her care, she felt like it was her duty. As Aisha warned me, perhaps things really were headed in an unfortunate direction. Would it be best for me to step in and deal with it before I left for my next assignment? Or was it wiser to stand by a little longer and watch how things played out? I decided to sleep alone that night since it was both Sylphie and Roxy's time of the month. Frankly, after going without for 10 whole days while training, it was kind of rough not getting any. I had little recourse otherwise, though. These days happened. Rudius, as if sensing the needs of my libido, or perhaps spurred on by her own, Eris showed up just outside of my bedroom. She had her arms crossed as usual, legs braced in a wide stance. She'd been wearing warmer pajamas lately, but today was clearly a special occasion since she was wearing a negligee I only normally saw her in when we were having sex. The thin fabric barely covered her bulging belly. Eris. Your tummy will get cold wearing that. We're doing it, she declared. No, we are not. Our baby was too precious. It was the rule here not to have sex when one of the girls was pregnant. But you want to, right? I already heard Sylphie and Roxy can't do it. It's fine, I assured her. I'll just go without today. You're my husband. There's no need for you to go without. Eris promptly grabbed my hand and yanked me to my feet. She was so powerful that I had no choice but to be dragged along into the bedroom. Oh crap. I don't like how things are going. If we do it once, we won't be able to put on the brakes and stop there. And that was the problem. Forget how much she was exercising already during her pregnancy, we couldn't add to the physical activity. Wait, Eris. Let's stop. It's not good to do it when you're pregnant. We'd both regret it if you had a miscarriage or something. I absolutely can't take that. I mean it. I know that. That's why I've been watching myself this whole time. Watching herself? Going to the school and walking the dog, she called that watching herself? Well, sure, it was probably good to get some exercise instead of remaining sedentary the entire time, but, still, maybe it was just a matter of us having different ideas of what was appropriate. Maybe I was just being a worrywart. No. That's a completely different matter altogether, and that's why, here. Eris dragged me all the way to the side of the bed and pulled back the blanket. Linnea was underneath, lying in my bed. She was wearing something similar to Eris's nightgown, looking beguiling even as she curled her body inward. If you can't have me, then have your way with Linnea, said Eris. Linnea glanced up at me with resigned determination, as if she'd given up fighting against this. The fabric of her negligee was so transparent I could almost see the peaks of her breasts. She had a tight waist but proper muscles over the rest of her body, which made her legs nice and thick. Her cat eyes gleamed in the darkness. Rather than feel aroused by this sight, I was so dumbfounded that I gaped at Eris. What is going on here? I told you. Linnea. My Eris was telling me to have sex with Linnea? Despite her affectations of nonchalance, she was actually quite the jealous one and used to pout when she caught Sylphie and I fussing over each other, but now that same girl was telling me to sleep with someone else? Eris, doesn't this kinda, count as cheating? It's not cheating since she's a slave. That's what my grandfather and father always said. Besides, it's no secret since I'm right here, so there isn't a problem. Sorrows, Philip, get your butts over here and take a seat on the floor. Keep your backs straight. Miss Hilda? Miss Hilda, are you there? Please scold these two men for me. Your husband has taught your daughter some very weird and inappropriate things. Mommy and Daddy back in the Great Forest, your poor little girl has become a slave and now she's going to be a sex toy starting today. Mew, Linnea muttered under her breath, saying some kind of a prayer. So she wasn't willing after all. It was best to put a stop to this. I couldn't let her be